In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meetings law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation. For the record, subsequently, the member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If a member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphone can be turned on and off by using the gray button on top of them, and they are on when they're indicated by a blue light. Okay. We have meeting minutes from April 12th, 2024 of the External Affairs Committee. Any corrections or additions? Can I have a motion to approve? A second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is approved. I'd like to ask the chairs of each of the advisory councils to provide us with updates on activities since the last meeting. Business Advisory Council, Bob Duncan.
Yeah, I think everything is in the minutes. If there's any questions.
All right, the summary can be found in the packet. And the Community Advisory Council is not present at this time, so their summary can be found in the packet, as well with the Rural Advisory Council and Emerging Leaders Advisory Council. All that information is in the packet. Public comments on current agenda items. Has anybody signed in to speak today? Nobody has. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Is there an executive director's report?
Just a few brief items. Thank you. Good morning. Just wanted to follow up with the Northeast Ohio Commuter Choice Awards. This is our 11th annual. We mentioned it at the last meeting. You asked for some promotional materials. We've sent those out, and just continue to help us get the word out on the program. And then you should have received by now an email from us about our board engagement and communication survey. And we're looking to assess how we work with the board, particularly communications. And we are asking for volunteers for interviews. We need about 5 or 6 board members to help us develop survey questions for the rest of the board. And it'll be an online survey to all of the board members. And then we will bring back to the full board some results, which will present a data review. And so if you received that email and you're interested in helping us, please let us know.
Thank you, Grace. I think, I know I got the emails yesterday
Okay, good.
with all the media stuff, so I think that's for us to go out into our social media
Correct.
and push all that as much as possible. So if you can look for that in your email, and also if anybody would want to volunteer for the survey, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no action items. Presentations, discussion items. Priority focus area is the Virtual Public Affairs Forum. Grace and Danielle.
Yes, good morning. I'll turn it right over to Danielle in a second. Just want to give a few words that at the last External Affairs Committee, or the first External Affairs Committee in January, we had priority focus areas that were approved to support communication, outreach, policy education, and advocacy initiatives. And just wanting to ensure that the outreach efforts best support the work of the agency And we had a new focus area that was recommended regarding a virtual public affairs forum. And Danielle is going to talk today about the potential themes for that. And we'll have a nice discussion about the platform as well. Danielle?
Okay, thank you, Director Galucci, and to the chair and members, good morning. So virtual forums are not new to NOACA. We have successfully conducted forums in the past in a series of events for our lunch and learns and even a climate action. So it's always really centered around a series topic. And so this is the first opportunity that we have that we could really start looking at the other work that we're doing and creating a virtual forum. And we would like a quarterly forum to really talk about the other work that we do and connecting the community to these topics. And so our goal is always to encourage public participation, improve our communications, and increase collaborations while doing so. And so we are encouraging this committee to actively participate in these quarterly planning events. And so if you have any suggestions for panelists or facilitating discussions or even providing other strategies for us. And I can say that what we've done in the past is always stay really close to home. We have a lot of great stakeholders that we work with, including our board, our subcommittees and council members, and other topic experts in the areas of what we would like to discuss. And 85% has been very much close to home. So we would like to continue to do that. So some of the suggested themes and topics that we have is one, transportation, infrastructure, and investment. And we really want to look at a theme in October, improving transportation networks, including roads, bridges, public transit, and other active transportation options. We also looked at a suggested theme on equity and social justice, and we're looking to have this discussion in January, and just to consider how transportation decisions impact the different communities and aiming for fair and inclusive outcomes. The third suggested theme is economic development, which we would like to have next May, and really talk about our SEDS and how collaborating with local governments and businesses can boost economic growth. And our last, one of our favorites, environmental planning, and looking at discussions on climate action planning and an overview of the work that we're currently doing in August of next year. So our next steps is to generate a request form. It's a call to speakers and panelists for participation. As I mentioned, 85% of those who have assisted us with our climate action planning series, as well as our lunch and learns, have been very targeted with our board committees and council members. And so we would like to poll and bring this information back to this committee based on the suggestions that NOACA has and from the call form, and move to confirm the speakers as well as promoting the virtual event. So some of the ways that we've advertised and promoted, as always, our central website. We do paid advertisements, our general social media, and we've also done participating panelists and media kits. Director Galucci was talking earlier about the Commuter Choice Awards and some of the types of information that we would send out to share. We do postcard distributions, we use our digital platform, and media and our marketing partnerships. So every avenue that we can do to have that reach, we've created strategies to do that, to promote all of our events, and particularly for this virtual forum. So some of the dates that we've outlined is the selection of proposed topics. We're looking to complete that by the 22nd of July and really moving into August 16th of just confirming those participants. We will advertise by August 23rd and have the link and platforms available August 29th and start the promotion as early as September 1st. We are proposing October 24th as that date. As we send the poll out, we'll have some dates for you to look at and to consider as well. So if there's any discussions in regards to that.
I saw the area where you're talking about advertisement. Do you have a list of constituencies that you really would like to see participate?
I can't hear you. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
I can.
sorry. I saw that there's a list of, different things that you're going to do to advertise, but do you have a list of constituencies
Mm.
that you really want to see or really identify to show up
Oh,
at the
definitely.
place?
And I'm glad that you asked that question. We really pride ourselves on doing, being very intentional with those selected topics. So we do what we call content mapping. So we map those messages to those audiences. And so we do have a robust list of a lot, based on a lot of the work that we do. So very collectively, we have over 10,000 in a list, and we may not send everything out to 10,000 people, but we're very intentional with what we do.
I've just been pretty impressed this summer with some of the younger fellows that have been at the
Mhm.
county and
Mhm.
maybe trying to really hone in on maybe some of the local colleges to
Okay,
get some ideas from some of
okay,
those folks also, just a suggestion.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question for Danielle? Okay, we'll move on to long-range plan
Okay.
update. It's also Danielle.
Okay. So this topic is our long-range plan, ENEO 2050, and I'm just going to give you a overview of our upcoming public engagement. So most of you know that our ENEO 2050, which we are now calling ENEO 2050 Plus, we have been doing considerable work since June 2021 when we adopted the plan. And so we're focusing on planning a regional transportation network, infrastructure investments, and reigniting the region's economic growth and competitiveness. And so this presentation will identify all of the areas that are proposed for the long range plan updates and some of the strategies that we would like to present for public input. So everything that we do with the long range planning and most of our public engagement is always about engaging the community. And so the ENEO 2050 has been a very collaborative effort with our stakeholders and our general public. And so we would continue to just reach out and look for diverse voices to help us um, devise a plan that is what we call the people's plan, and that we have opportunities to engage the general public in various ways just to have those discussions and input in regards to this long range plan. And I have some numbers here to kind of tell you, like for 18 months, we did public involvement for the initial plan, and we had over 3,200 active participants. We had over 7,000 subscribers to our digital platform, and we conducted 122 meetings. And so, will this be as robust? Yes, it would be as robust in communications and how we try to garner participation and comments. But I want to show you that this is a really great for us because we've been able to continue to have relationships and engagements still with some of these participants. Our active participant list just for the ENEO 2050 in the site is over 8,000 right now. So there's still, because of the work that we do and that we're implementing, there's still discussions, there's still active participants in there, and we would still like to grow those numbers as far as reach. So some of the proposed focus areas updates include scenario planning, 2050 population projections, highway congestion, daily transit ridership, sidewalk network and stop analysis, household travel survey, technology such as our EV charging stations, and major project investments. These proposed areas are under development. So as soon as they are developed for us to go to the community, we'll be able to start activating the engagement. So what we have done in the past and will continue to do is really look at this discovery phase when we kick off with any type of communication. So we'll have a media kickoff, we'll hold visioning events per county, and we'll conduct network workshops to provide preliminary concepts. on the work that's being developed. We'll go into the alternatives area where we'll analyze the system and scenarios. And every step that we have, we will engage communities to be involved. There's a preliminary updated plan as well as a final draft updated plan. And during that time, we'll have a public meeting regarding that, as well as proposing it to the NOACA board for approval. And I mentioned earlier when we talk about public involvement and our approaches, our content mapping is really what I call taking our audience on a journey. We're very intentional. If we have specific focus areas that we're working on, we really want to look at the community needs and impact from that and target content to specific audiences for feedback. So although the information is for all audiences to give feedback, we do have strategic marketing campaigns that are very intentional to those audiences that we feel that have more impact. And public awareness, providing the public with multiple opportunities to engage with us. We try to be very creative and not do just the typical type of engagement. So we create activities and approaches to help them, not only just for what we need from them, but also to talk about NOACA. Any opportunity that we could talk about the work that we do and to help them with those decision making we do. So it's a lot of clear messaging and just developing more inclusive approaches to get feedback. And a lot of that is generated through communication. So communications to me is always about the stakeholders. It's the general public, it's the stakeholders, but those who are more familiar with what we do. And so we do work on a sort of a two-prong approach. There's this communication that goes out with social media, paid advertisement, there's collateral materials, there's surveys and comment cards, and there's promotion materials that really talk about how to stay connected to us. But the other side of that are the marketing strategies to vast audiences that may not be familiar with NOACA. And so we do take that into account, and we change some of not the language, but the approaches to make sure that it's very intentional to audiences to connect with us. And so the interactive digital approaches would be the ENEO 2050 website. That is where you can go and look at all the information that is happening with the long-range plan. Right now, we're focusing on the climate action planning, and you'll see that there's a lot of information that you could download from there, but there's information on the long-range plan. And so we would start redeveloping the site to show a presence of how all could communicate with us and learn more and how they could participate. We also have reacted a site called MindMixer. MindMixer was used for our climate action planning in the past. It's at noacalive.mindmixer.com. You could register on there, and this is where discussions would start. So there's a whole campaign around every topic, scenario updates that we would have that people can go onto the site and really start talking about it. They can ask questions. They could incite some information for us. We just want it to be collaborative and a community forum where we could gain more information on people's perspectives of what the work that we're doing. And we also have interactive kiosks. We've provided them here before, but we've used them at various library locations, very successful, of just downloading information. We have videos on there that they could download. We have questionnaires, which are really brief, but it is engaging, and it's been very helpful in the past for us to use as part of our public engagement. And we have a host of videos. We have a video library about the ENEO 2050, and we would continue to create more assets for marketing for people to learn more about the long-range plan and the updates. We'll also do the lunch and learns. We're looking to have 5 lunch and learns. Again, the lunch and learns and even our podcasts are all part of series. They're topical based on the work that we're doing. Long range plan was the first one that we did. The next one was the climate action planning. These are large public engagements. And so we're looking to do that as well. In-person focus meetings as well as virtual meetings and roundtables. But overall, we're looking at messages that inspire people to, tell our story. We need to increase our audience reach and increase our community exposure. So everything that we do, that we deliver and update and bring public awareness to the plan, we're always going to be talking about NOACA and what we do to connect the dots to every aspect of our work. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Danielle? Thank you, Danielle.
Okay, thank you.
Next will be climate action planning, public engagement with Grace and Joel.
Well, I'm going to introduce Joel Ratner from the Joel Ratner Community Partnership, and Joel will take us through the presentation. And this is to continue our work on the climate action plan based on the receipt of the grant from US EPA, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. So Joel?
Thank you very much, Grace, and thank you, Danielle. Glad to be here today. Thank you to NOACA for the chance to be involved with the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. It's a very exciting program. It focuses on 3 key objectives: to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to tackle damaging climate pollution, while supporting creation of good jobs, lowering energy costs, accelerating work to address environmental injustice. So there's a real focus, as you'll hear, on low-income communities here and ensuring that they are benefiting from the efforts and not harmed, and to deliver cleaner air by reducing harmful air pollutants. And NOAC and the City of Cleveland, who are partners in this grant, were awarded it's a $1 million grant in July last year. And then I had the opportunity to work with NOAC as a contractor on the engagement efforts. So we're going to tell you also about the low-income community requirements for the upcoming outreach effort. So we're just in the process now of starting with the outreach effort and putting it together. So the first step, of course, already in March, a priority climate action plan had to be submitted according to the EPA. So I am sure that you've received a copy of that. And now all the work is toward the comprehensive climate action plan. So we talk about the PCAP and the CCAP. The comprehensive, the full plan is due in July 2025, which is 2 years from the grant award date. And then, of course, there is a status report after that. So really now everything is around this deadline in July 2025, so a year from now. As you know, NOACA had great vision and really started its climate action planning before the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant was even authorized, much less granted to NOACA. So we did have a robust public engagement strategy over last summer and into the fall, where we engaged a significant number of people. And this public engagement effort was used as part of EPA's climate pollution reduction grant program, completed in March of 2024. Again, I told you that was already submitted, the PCAP. And there is a significant emphasis on public outreach as an integral part of continuing the process. So I'll tell you about that today. So a very robust ongoing engagement effort. EPA has a number of required plan elements. So there is a new greenhouse gas inventory that is being completed. The city is the lead on that. And that will lead to a number of conversations. So you're going to hear more about that in the weeks and months ahead, I'm sure. And then there is, again, a benefits analysis around those low-income communities, the LIDAC communities. So want to point that out. So the greenhouse gas inventory, which is being updated, previously there was one from 2018, so we'll have one from 2022. So again, the comprehensive plan, which is due next year, has all of these requirements and has the opportunity to leverage significant federal funding. There are a number of grants that have already been submitted, but I believe ongoing opportunities to submit grants based on this effort. As you will recall, I hope, last summer, as part of the initial or the previous engagement effort, we had 30 sessions in the 5 counties. Just a reminder, we did actually emphasize the 4 counties outside of Cuyahoga, but we had very significant engagement in all 5 counties, over 700 people. And there was over 80% support for the climate action planning effort and for taking strong steps toward responding to climate change. There were significant concerns about unpredictable weather, poor air quality. Again, last summer we did have the Canadian wildfires, so there was a lot of conversation since that, what happened around the time of the engagement, and a lot of concern about the future of the next generation. There was also a vocal minority asking questions about the validity of the climate change concept and NOACA's role. NOACA's staff implemented 2 primary climate action planning, public engagement efforts, again, which you're aware of. And again, each campaign had different objectives and consisted of different engagement approaches. So there were multiple engagement approaches in addition to the 30 meetings that I facilitated. There were podcasts, lunch and learns. There was surveys. There was an online survey which several hundred people, I believe, participated in. There were kiosks in libraries, collateral materials, and social media and digital platform messaging. So there were a significant number of ways to engage. The next rounds of engagement, which, as I said, we're really rolling out in the months to come, will focus on the low-income and disadvantaged communities, and that's really a requirement of the grant. It's all being done in partnership with the City of Cleveland. Again, the grant is given to NOACA and the City of Cleveland. We are really just now engaging with nonprofit and governmental partners, so really going to them to best understand how to effectively reach out in LIDAC communities. And we'll share, of course, the previous outreach efforts, so there will be context and it will all be connected, and will further engage communities and residents as part of this. One of the major parts of this engagement is sharing these priority measures. These priority measures were included in the plan, the preliminary plan, which was provided to the EPA, I believe, in March. And again, I'm sure you've seen this, the 10 priorities. I won't read them, but this is available to you, and again, is part of what was submitted to the EPA. And then, as I said, the greenhouse gas inventory. The baseline we had been using was a 2018 report, and the the data is just being crunched and will be available soon on a 2022 update. NOACA will be focusing on the 4 counties outside of Cuyahoga. The City of Cleveland will do the engagement effort in the city. Cuyahoga County will engage stakeholders in the county outside of Cleveland, and NOACA will focus on the LIDAC outreach in Geauga, Lake, Lorraine, and Medina. Technically, there are no communities that that fit in this technical definition for LIDAC in Medina, but in keeping with the spirit of the grant, we will be reaching out to environmental justice communities there, which we've identified. So you can see the green pins in Medina. So we will do outreach in the 4 counties outside of Cuyahoga, and Cleveland and Cuyahoga will do the other outreach. And so we've identified these communities. We're now reaching out. Shortly, we will be reaching out to partners to engage in those places. Really, it's intended to be a very effective and meaningful, authentic engagement, and where community concerns will be considered, the public will be listened to, and again, all this will be ultimately part of the plan that will be submitted in a year. We'll leverage the existing efforts, and again, there will be a coordinated effort. There will be, again, multiple engagement approaches, so we're really developing all of that right now, but looking to engage people in whatever mode and modality suits them best. There are going to be regular meetings with the LIDAC representatives, and again, we're identifying key stakeholders who will partner with us. The next steps is actually we have a meeting this afternoon with the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County to develop an aligned and coordinated approach. And we're going to talk about the greenhouse gas data, how we're going to collect all the data. I'm really talking about doing, as I said, a cohesive and coordinated approach. And as I said, we're focusing in those 4 counties. So that's where we are, really just kicking it off. And I think we're right on schedule and ready to really engage.
Thank you. Any questions for Joel?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Government Affairs update, Bev.
Good morning to members of the committee and to the chair. Bev Bertzloff, Associate Director of Government Affairs here at NOACA. And I'm just going to give you our quarterly brief update on some of the things we've been working on with our in our Government Affairs division. And this is very informal. If you have any questions, feel free to speak up. If you have comments or input, please feel free to interrupt. No action is requested, and there's no previous action on this item. And I always give my disclaimer that everything we do in government affairs is grounded in our federal and state legislative agenda that gets updated each year in December by the board. We made some minor changes this past year, including adding climate resilience and economic development in that priority 3. So we have priorities at the federal and state level. And then to go with that legislative agenda, we have a more detailed 2-sided document, our federal and state initiatives for action, which really gives more specifics about how we will put those priorities into action. So, and these documents were all included in your packet. So I'll start with some of the federal initiatives, and many of you have seen this slide before. This happened back in April. But I did want to mention it again, that our government affairs team, myself, Andrew Bean, who works with us now, and Grace Galucci went to the Hill and met with some of our delegations. And actually, we met with every office that represents our region. So members of Congress, senators, and or their staffs. And we discussed a number of issues, including that legislative agenda, passenger rail, grant funding opportunities for the region. We gave them a really good sheet of listing all of the pending grants from our region at that time and talking to them about those projects and soliciting their support. They were all very enthusiastic and offering to be helpful. We talked about our comprehensive economic development strategy that NOACA has developed and that has been approved by the Economic Development Administration. And we talked about the region's climate action planning activities and our pending implementation grant. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So in terms of one of our major federal priorities since passage, or since enactment of the infrastructure law, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, has been to coordinate a regional approach to maximize the impact of the transportation funding on Northeast Ohio. And as we've talked about previously, this new infrastructure law really drastically increased the amount of discretionary grant programs available to fund transportation and environmental projects. So we approached that by developing a strategy, mapping out all of those opportunities over 5 years, and plotting out various projects in NOACA's long-range plan to make sure that almost every one of those opportunities would have a project being submitted from our region. And so far that is happening almost with almost every funding opportunity. We're, following up and making sure that a project gets submitted from Northeast Ohio. One new development is that we are developing a one-stop webpage that will talk about all the various funding opportunities, both through the feds, through the state, and also through some of NOACA's programs. So that's under development now, and we hope to have that ready to unveil maybe by your next meeting. So we continue to administer our strategy. We reach out every time there's a funding opportunity that is opened. We reach out to the project sponsors that are listed on our strategy to make sure they're still going to submit their application. And if not, we help guide them through the process of suggesting an update to the strategy, and/or we go to the next project that was listed if the first project isn't ready to move forward. So we continue to administer that. We continue supporting all of these applications going in from Northeast Ohio with letters of support and then continued advocacy. So if you are submitting an application, make sure you reach out to us. We'll get you that letter. We'll get you ongoing advocacy. We do like 2 weeks notice. If you are looking for a letter of support, it takes a while for us to, get that prepared. So, and I just want to mention that there's been a lot of federal funding coming to this region since enactment of the IIJA. Just since our last meeting 3 months ago, these are some of the awards that have been made. So the pilot program for transit-oriented development awarded $700,000 to RTA. A Safe Streets for All grant went to Rocky River. All Stations Accessibility Program awarded $16 million to GCRTA for the Blue Line. Airport Terminal Program awarded $8 million to Cleveland Hopkins and $2.6 million for Lake County Airport. In addition, Airport Improvement Program, $2.9 million to Lake County Airport for runway and taxiway rehab. A very exciting award was $19.5 million to Cleveland Metro Parks through the RAISE grant program for their East Side Trails construction. On the planning side of RAISE, $1.5 million was awarded to the City of Lorraine for its East 36th Street corridor. And then GCRTA received $10.6 million for its through the Bus and Bus Facilities Program to purchase EVs and charging infrastructure. This was just this past week, so that was an exciting award too. There have also been a number of awards through IIJA funding through EPA. We don't coordinate the EPA projects the way we do the transportation projects, but we still follow these, and we also advocate for these with letters of support and continued advocacy. There are a number of grants that are pending right now. Some of these are pretty, some big dollar requests. City of Cleveland has requested $360 million through the Mega Infra program. It's one of the biggest grant, probably is the biggest grant program through USDOT for their North Coast Connector. Cuyahoga County submitted a $28.8 million request for the Hilliard Road Bridge reconstruction through the Bridge Improvement Program. Several communities have requested funding through the Safe Streets for All program. And City of Cleveland has also requested $8 million for a multimodal transportation center on the lakefront through the Chrissy Grant Program, which is a Federal Railroad Administration program. And then there are several others that will soon be submitted. I'll turn quickly to passenger rail. We continue our support at both the federal level and the state level on this priority. NOACA recently participated in a summit in beautiful downtown Erie, Pennsylvania. We were invited there by the Lakeshore Rail Alliance to participate in this summit on June 13th with a number of other speakers to talk about how we can improve this corridor from Cleveland to Buffalo. This has been one of NOACA's 3 priority corridors. And we have a lot of friends to the east who are pursuing that same goal. There was a panel discussion with numerous officials, including 2 members of the Lakeshore Rail Alliance, Grace Galucci, Derek James from Amtrak, and a gentleman from an engineering firm, Wabtec. And this was a slide that Lakeshore Rail Alliance had included in their presentation, but I thought it kind of made the point. The missing link, you can see, if you can see on that map, there is a thin gray line there from Cleveland to Buffalo. So service does exist. It's not like there isn't passenger rail service from Cleveland to Buffalo. It's just not very good, and it's middle of the night. And so NOACA and some of these other organizations, as well as MPOs and states to the east, would like to see that service improved. NOACA's presentation focused on the economic benefits of improving passenger rail throughout the Great Lakes region. And for that, we drew a lot of information from the previous work that was done on the Hyperloop feasibility study that was done in the past for NOACA. And so Grace's presentation focused on these benefits, these economic benefits to the region. We talked about how we plan to resubmit our corridor ID proposals for east-west service through Cleveland, that we are supporting Amtrak's budget proposal, which includes funding to upgrade stations along the Lake Erie shoreline, along the Lakeshore Limited routes. We are supporting City of Cleveland's application through the Chrissy Grant program to improve that station on Cleveland's lakefront. And we hope to work through this new Great Lakes Authority. It's a new federal entity that was established by law through the work of Representative Marcy Kaptur recently. And that organization is sort of just getting organized and up and running, but we think it will provide extra support for our efforts to improve passenger rail through the region. In addition, just wanted to point out that our Executive Director, Grace, participated in a study group that the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, put together to study the long distance rail in our country and potential for adding new routes. We had tried to convince them that for one of these potential routes, and again, these are just proposed routes, these are just proposed routes, they were looking at adding a route someday to go from Detroit to New Orleans. We were suggesting that they kind of jog that route over a little bit and pick up Cleveland. They didn't bite on that just yet, but you know, it's something we'll continue to support. And we'll just continue to advocate in general for improve long-distance service through Cleveland, starting with supporting Amtrak's request to upgrade these stations along the Lake Erie shoreline. This, just a reminder that the feasibility study is still ongoing for the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad extension to bring that from Independence up to Cleveland, to downtown. That should wrap up sometime by end of this year. And while we're talking rail, just wanted to throw this in here. There is the Federal Railroad Administration just opened funding for a new railroad, it's not new, but a new round of funding for the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program to improve safety and mobility at rail crossings, reduce the impact of freight movement on underserved communities. So if you or your communities, or, feel free to pass this message along. This is a great opportunity to get funding for some of those dangerous rail crossings that many of your communities may have. The deadline to apply is September 23. Local governments and ports are eligible. And one interesting thing is there's funding available through the state of Ohio that would provide your local match. So it's kind of a win-win. So be sure to keep that in mind and share that with your communities. Next steps on passenger rail, we will continue to support our corridor ID proposals and the state of Ohio's corridor ID proposals. As you can see on that map, the lines in yellow were approved to move forward with initial scoping studies. One of those is the so-called 3C+D corridor that goes Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati. The state of Ohio applied for funding to start that study, and they received it. So I think they're getting underway with that, and they've hired a firm now to do that initial scoping. The other one that the state applied for and received funding for was Cleveland to Toledo and then north to Detroit. So those are two routes that come through our city that would bring additional passenger rail service. So we continue to support the state on its efforts to move forward with those studies and urge them to, do the due diligence to get where we need to be to bring those to fruition eventually. We've been supporting a bill introduced by local Representative Mike Skindell, House Bill 488. It requires Ohio to rejoin something called the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Compact. Ohio used to be part of this compact. It's a multi-state compact with a commission, and it includes almost all of our Midwest neighbors. Ohio was a member. It left the compact during the Kasich years, and we are supporting this bill that would require Ohio to rejoin the compact. It basically, it gives us more standing and gives us more credibility, both with the feds and with our neighboring states when it comes to our efforts to improve passenger rail. So we think that's an important place to start. I also want to touch on our work with climate pollution reduction. One of the stated goals in our initiatives for action is to maximize funding opportunities through the Inflation Reduction Act and pursue regional climate pollution reduction goals. And as you all know, and as Joel just discussed, the city of Cleveland and NOACA received $1 million to prepare the priority climate action plan that was submitted in February. And now we're working on the comprehensive climate action plan, which is due July 25th of next year. And then for the second phase of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, there was an implementation grant notice of funding opportunity where eligible entities could apply for funding to implement some of these climate planning measures. So NOACA and the city of Cleveland jointly applied before the April 1 deadline for a grant that we called Reclaiming the Forest City. It involves providing e-bike rebates through Bike Cleveland, working with Bike Cleveland to set up a program so that residents in our 5 counties could get a rebate if they purchase an e-bike, which gets cars off the road and reduces emissions, which improves air quality and also contributes to climate pollution reduction. The proposal would also create a complete and green streets fund at NOACA so we could help improve the riding environment for those riding e-bikes and also for pedestrians. And a tree canopy fund that would be administered through the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. So we are waiting for a decision on this grant application. We were told that EPA would make the decisions on these grants sometime in July. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, we hope to learn. There was a second application submitted from our region. We, NOACA, weren't personally involved in this, but we did support this. Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, and Paynesville submitted an application. Municipal Empowerment for Clean Energy and Conservation. This was a bigger grant application requesting more funding. It promotes solar energy, replaces the Paynesville coal-fired plant, and would create solar arrays in a number of communities throughout the region. So we're watching closely on both of these applications to see if either of these or both get funded. Our government affairs team is also very involved in our goals related to economic development and administering our comprehensive economic development strategy that NOACA manages for the region. On the federal side, we are supporting a bill, Senate bill for S3891 in the United States Senate, introduced by Senator Carper from Delaware. It would reauthorize the Economic Development Administration for the first time in 20 years for 5 years and provide a great deal of additional funding and update some of their programs. So given that we now have a SEDS and that NOACA has applied to become an economic development district, it benefits our region to support this. So this, something you might want to share with your networks to support S3891. It's a bipartisan bill. It seems to have a lot of support. We're hoping it will move through. We also continue to support EDA grant applications from communities and organizations. We recently, just yesterday, provided a letter of support for a Team NEO Aerozone application. They're seeking funding from EDA to do a comprehensive study to capitalize on NASA Glenn and the airport and the economic development spillover potential from those assets. So so if your community or organization that you know of is applying for EDA funding, please let us know, and we'd like to support that. And we continue to advocate for approval of NOACA's EDD, Economic Development District status. Also at the state level, I just wanted to mention Representative Bride Rose Sweeney has introduced a bill called the Clean Ohio Revitalization Fund. And that would create a permanent source of funding for brownfield redevelopment. So that's something that would benefit our region, and we are supporting that. Some other state initiatives, one of the big ones recently that we've been very engaged in is this whole interstate interchange issue. As you all may recall, in the last transportation budget in 2023, language was put in to require interchanges at certain places based on a sort of complicated specific formula. And that is, not the way decisions have been made in the past with regard to interstate interchanges. That's something that the FRA has developed very clear rules. The FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, has developed very clear rules about. There's a process, and that process has to be followed because ultimately for any new interchange or modified interchange, on the federal highway system, the ultimate decider would be the Secretary of Transportation. So they would require that the process be followed. But the state budget in 2023 included language that attempted to basically override that process and mandate the construction of an interchange based on this formula that currently only applies to one particular location in the state of Ohio, which is at Boston Road between Medina and Cuyahoga counties. So at the time when the budget was being deliberated in the State House, we went down and NOACA testified against that provision in both the House and Senate. It was taken out, but then it was re-added during conference negotiations. So it did become law. The governor signed the bill into law. And subsequent to that, NOACA's board adopted Resolution 2023-45 to support a House and Senate bill to repeal that requirement for interstate interchanges on the grounds that it violated the federal policy, federal process, and it also violated the MPO's role or ignored the MPO's role in making decisions like this about major investments in our transportation system. So more recently, NOACA provided testimony in June at a State House hearing before the House Economic and Workforce Development Committee. The chair invited NOACA specifically to come to testify to assure the committee that NOACA is going to move forward with a study that will resolve the problems, the traffic congestion going on in the Strongsville area. So Grace Galucci testified to that effect, and I think that was necessary for the committee chair to consider legislation to overturn the previous language. We also provided written testimony in June for a Senate Transportation Committee on the Senate version of the repeal legislation. And in fact, SB 155 was adopted by the full Senate on June 26th and now has been sent over to the House. And SB 155 does repeal the previous interchange requirement, and it requires NOACA ODOT study to deal with the congestion issues in Strongsville. And of course, we've already moved forward on such a study. It's happening. We did the RFP, we received proposals, and once those are evaluated, we hope to have one of those proposals go before the board in September so the study can begin. So, you know, we're proud that we've played a role in moving SB 155 forward. And other state initiatives, you know, we continue, as always, to advocate for an increased transit funding in Ohio. The state of Ohio ranks near the bottom of all 50 states in terms of per capita funding for transit. We were trying to get a head start on that discussion in terms of the next transportation budget, which is just around the corner. The state fiscal year 26-27 Ohio transportation budget will be introduced by the governor in January. So we're trying to get a head start on that. We've started our government affairs team with Grace. We're scheduling meetings with our State House delegation to discuss issues relevant to the transportation budget. So we've already started scheduling those. They'll start happening this summer and throughout the fall. We're meeting with them up here in their districts on their own time, on their own schedule. So we look forward to sitting down and talking to as many of our legislators as possible. We're also working through our statewide organization, OARC, the Ohio Association of Regional Councils, and we're putting together as a team, as a state, as a collection of MPOs, our priorities for that next transportation budget. So we support proposals to increase transportation safety and reduce distracted driving. One new initiative that's going on, I brought this up with this committee the last meeting and kind of got a positive reception, got some support here for NOACA participating in a statewide safety initiative. There's a group that's formed called Ohioans for Safe Streets. And they are looking to find ways to give local communities more control over street design and speed limits that are more context-based and less formula-based. It might involve some potential legislation down the road. So I did go to Columbus with a number of members of this coalition a couple months ago to meet with various state legislators. We had by Cleveland, Jacob Van Sickle, Angie Schmidt with a consulting firm, 3MPH, Charles Slife, who's a Cleveland City Councilman, Tristan Rader, who's a Lakewood City Councilman, and some safety advocates from throughout the state. And we got very good reactions from all the legislators we talked to. We are, they are hearing a lot of stories in their own communities, in their own districts about safety issues. We all saw a huge increase in the number of traffic fatalities and injuries throughout the COVID era. People were driving faster, not following speed limits. Those numbers have come down just a little bit, but traffic incidents remain higher than they were pre-COVID. So there's still a need for action, and communities want to have more say in setting some of those speed limits through their communities. So the coalition's short-term goals are to support Representative Skindle's introduced State House Resolution, House Bill 490, for a World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. He himself, we had a great discussion in Columbus, and he talked about the time he was on his bike and was hit by a car and was injured pretty badly. He was in the bike lane doing everything he was supposed to do, but he was hit regardless. And so we are supporting that resolution. We also want to work with ODOT to see what could be done to give local communities more control over safe street design and speed limits. Some other legislation we're following, House Bill 340 in the State House for to create a new employer workforce mobility grant program. Unfortunately, the program as the bill as written right now would only provide these for employers in counties under 50,000 population, which doesn't help anyone in our region. So we are advocating to expand that to the larger counties, which have the same needs, and creating eligibility for current van pool programs like the one NOACA administers and van pools created through the Ohio Commute Program. So that's a lot. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions or
Thanks,
discussion?
Bev. Any questions for Bev? Yes.
Yeah, that was a lot of information. Going back to when you're talking about the passenger rail service, and and I know we've talked about this before. You had mentioned the one route starting in Detroit, and then moving to Point South, and potentially having that route come to Cleveland and then south. Looking at the map, I mean, I think that would be wonderful if something like that would be approved, but I have a feeling it won't because of where we're situated here in regards to Detroit. But maybe as a plan B, could there just be a connecting route from Cleveland to, I don't know, Toledo or something, and then head south, rather than not get that at all. It's kind of like a connecting flight,
Right.
you want to be able to have a direct flight everywhere, but we know that's not possible. And, but it would be nice to be able to take a passenger train to point south, maybe all the way down to New Orleans or whatever. But it might have to be a connector.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that, Commissioner. And we have supported there is rail service currently from Cleveland to Toledo. But it's that middle of the night service. You have to get to the train station at, 3 or 4 a.m. So that was one of NOACA's proposals through Corridor ID, was to improve that service with daytime service. So that's one of the things we'll keep fighting for. And I think eventually, we hope to get there. But yeah, a connector is a great idea.
The other thought I had, and I think this is actually probably more towards Danielle's presentation from earlier, but I think when we're talking about collaboration, with the various groups, I think when we were talking about the climate action plan and all that, I think a good group to collaborate with, and I'm not sure if we're really doing it, are these these 501c3 community groups that try to improve neighborhoods, housing, so forth. I think a lot of their goals and their mission probably mirrors NOACA's, in many areas. And I just wonder, are we working with these, grassroots groups? I think we and those groups would benefit from, working together.
Grace, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. We have and we do work with the various CDCs, community development organizations. Sometimes we work directly with them on projects. Oftentimes we work through their intermediary, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. As an example, the Amtrak service, we did work with Cleveland Neighborhood Progress to initiate a survey to help us build support, and they participated in the engagement efforts with us. But we can continue to do more.
And through the chair, if you have suggestions of groups that you think their interests coincide with ours, that you think could be helpful, please refer them to me or to Grace, and we would be happy to work. We're trying to build as big a coalition as we can. So thank you.
Yeah, I was just involved in a real estate deal in Akron, and one of the entities that made an offer on a property was one of these groups, and they had actually sent a video with their offer that I watched, and so many of the points they brought up are things that we talk about here, and so I just thought, well, it'd be nice to align with these groups, and just want to make sure that we were. Because they're out there and they do a lot of good work in some of these communities that need the help. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just a follow-up question, Bev, in regards to the, oh goodness, the trip passenger rail, yeah, because I know there, at one point through NOACA, they asked us to submit letters and have advocacy, but do we have a real indication one way or the other of when they will be making, I guess, a final decision, on the plans, and what has been, the feedback, if any, from our federal delegation?
Thank you for that, to the chair. So I assume you're asking about those long distance rail. Yeah. So that decision was considered by the FRA. It put together a study committee, and they had numerous meetings. Grace Galucci served on that committee. I don't know if you wanted to address that,
Yeah,
Grace.
sure. So the draft proposal has been announced. It was announced on June 5th, And we will not be part of that rail service from Detroit to New Orleans. So that is very unfortunate. They haven't published it as a final yet, but it is basically final. And, we'll continue to work with them on other opportunities. I just heard yesterday that there is talk now of a route from Chicago to Florida that will come through Cleveland. So that's an interesting one where they're going to be combining two routes and helping to reach Cleveland. So we'll keep on it.
Thank you very much for that update. That, yeah, will be very interesting, Chicago to Florida. But something is better than nothing. Count your blessings. Thank you.
Yes,
I was just in Florida and they have their, I'll call it fast train.
Great line.
Yeah, I don't want to call it high speed because I was keeping up with it on the freeway. But they connect city with city in Florida. So I think once you get off a rail at a station that provides that, it can get you around Florida. Now, I know they, in my estimation, they made some mistakes. They didn't go to like the Cape Canaveral area where a lot of people go on cruise ships. And that's the largest port for cruise ships, but they skipped that and decided to head south to Miami before they got there. So, but maybe that's the future here too, is the, within the state, we can connect or and then use it like a hub. Anybody else for Bev? Thank you, Bev.
Thank you.
Are there any reports or updates? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. Is there any old business to be before this committee? No old business? Is there any new business before this committee? None being seen. Just a reminder, our next meeting will be Friday, October 11th, 2024 at 8:30 a.m. right here. So we'll all see you then, if not before. And then can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second? We are adjourned. Oh.
Robert's Rules of Order. Actions taken during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she shall state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which the conflict exists. According to Robert's Rules of Order, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting in the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the gray button on top of them. They are on when the light is blue. And I think I skipped the Pledge of Allegiance, so let's do that now. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All righty. Next item, we'll go on to the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions? Being none, we have a motion to approve. Can I have a second? We have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We'll move on to subcommittee updates. Economic Development Subcommittee, Commissioner Hammercheck. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Equity Subcommittee, Bishop Gerald Maribel. Hopefully I said that correctly. Thank you very much. Public comments. Do we have anyone signed in to speak today? No one is signed in to speak today. We'll move on to the Chair/Executive Director report. I have nothing.
I have no report either. We'll get right to business.
Sounds good. And there are no action items. So we will move straight into presentations. So the first information is the Equity Consultant update from Grace and Liz.
So as you know, we had developed the equity subcommittee as part of our overall, the board's statement on racial equity back in June of 2020. We have made some substantial progress on moving forward with the equity subcommittee. And a major part of that now is the hiring of an equity consultant. And I will turn it over to Liz Barlick to go into the detail.
Good morning. I'm Liz Barlick, Associate Director of Executive Affairs. I am the staff member who works with the Equity Subcommittee. So just to give you, the Equity Subcommittee obviously reports up to you all at the Policy Committee. So here's a brief update on the consultant we've selected to work with the subcommittee. No action requested. This is for information only. So here's a timeline. In June of 2023, the Equity Subcommittee adopted strategic work plan goals, objectives, and actions. In September of 2023, there was discussion about hiring a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional to help advance those goals. In December of 2023, the subcommittee actually drafted a scope of services to hire an equity consultant, which beyond just DEI training would also include implementation of the goals, objectives, and actions that had been drafted. There was an RFP issued in January and February. There were 2 submissions that were received. A selection committee consisting of myself, Bishop Mirabel, Commissioner Hammercheck, Victor Landry evaluated those submissions. We held some interviews with the 2 organizations that had submitted responses, asked them some questions, and ultimately selected Compass Consulting. Compass Consulting did present to the Equity Subcommittee at our last meeting in June, but unfortunately is not able to be here today, but I'm just going to briefly go over their plan. They're already getting started on moving forward. Compass Consulting is a certified minority and women-owned organizational development firm specializing in DEI. So some of the things they do is to conduct DEI training sessions, facilitate DEI audits and strategic plans. They provide individual coaching and develop processes for decision-making to ensure equity is embedded in all of the work of an organization. They were founded in 2008 and are headquartered here in Northeast Ohio. Their role in this specific context for NOACA and the board is to act as a facilitator, to work with staff and the equity subcommittee to help the board and staff do our work through an equity lens, and to work closely with the equity subcommittee to execute the strategic plan that had been adopted last year. So in doing this work, these are the key deliverables that they will develop. Obviously, their DEI work directly with the subcommittee, an internal organizational DEI audit, leadership and board trainings, and then ongoing consulting and support. So a little bit more about each of those items. Compass will facilitate and guide the equity subcommittee and other stakeholders through a process to finalize relevant DEI terminology. This is something that was specifically called out in the scope of services from the RFP, is to come up with definitions for DEI terminology that could be used internally and with the board. An internal organizational DEI audit, an analysis of strengths and weaknesses of the organization as it's related to DEI. So this is a 6-step process, which will consist of review of organizational history and documentation. I've already sent them some of our documents, including our DEI policy, the charter for the equity subcommittee, the long-range plan, which of course is based in equity. Step 2 is to conduct individual interviews and focus groups. This is where we'll ask for participation from some of you all to participate as an interviewee or as a focus group. They will develop a survey, administer that survey, and then analyze the data and develop recommendations. From that data, they will then assist the NOACA board and staff in using influence and platforms and ongoing equity work, and then develop training and topics based on the information that comes out of those surveys, interviews, and focus groups. Generally, that could include something like DEI basics or making the business case for DEI. And then they will provide ongoing consulting and support. The contract we have with Compass is not to exceed $50,000. And Compass will continue to work with staff and the equity subcommittee to execute the strategic plan and implement their deliverables. And that's all I have.
I was just wondering, what is the timeline for them? I mean, that's a lot of really great work to come back and make a full presentation to the board on some recommendations, some thoughts going forward after the interviews and all that.
They're hoping to do it by the end of the year.
End of the year? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to comprehensive climate action plan. Mr. McDonald.
Good morning, everyone. There's no action requested from you at this time. I'll remind everyone that the NOACA board approved the regional climate action priorities, which inform the priority climate action plan January the 12th. NOACA staff submitted the priority climate action plan, or the PCAP, on February the 28th, and we received approval from US EPA on March the 7th. The Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, you're very familiar with this, but just to remind you, this was authorized under the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. This program has 2 phases. We received $1 million in the first phase, $250 million non-competitive planning grant program, which is available to metropolitan statistical areas and states. And then the bulk of the money, nearly $5 billion, is available through a competitive implementation grants program. And we're waiting to hear about our application with the city of Cleveland. There were 3 deliverables as part of the $1 million planning grant program. The first deliverable we have already submitted and received approval. That was the PCAP. The comprehensive climate action plan is the subject of my presentation today. That's the second major deliverable. That's due in a year. And then there will be a status report at the end of the award period in 2027. The PCAP is available online at eneo2050.com under CAP materials, and we encourage you to read it in full. The priority measures for the PCAP outline a set of potential actions that could be taken in our region to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There were 10, they're part of the PCAP. Like I said, they were approved by the board back in January. What I want to lay out for you today is how the CCAP is going to be different from the PCAP. In general, think of the CCAP as the final or comprehensive climate action plan that has much more detail and much more data than the PCAP. The PCAP really established the framework for climate action planning. The CCAP really fleshes out the bones of that framework. To help everyone understand what the CCAP will entail, I'm going to walk you through each of the elements and compare what the PCAP required and included and what we are going to do for the CCAP. So let's start with the greenhouse gas inventory. As you know, we prepared a regional greenhouse gas inventory for a 2018 baseline year. We realized that 2018 is now 6 years in the past, and so we are going to update that greenhouse gas inventory to the year 2022 baseline. That is the most current data we have available. We're in 2024. The next data set would be the 2024 data. That won't be available for another year, year and a half. The inventory will include, in addition to what you've already seen in terms of the breakout by sectors, the breakout by county, all emissions and sinks by source and sink category following commonly accepted protocols for the sectors. We're looking at industry, electricity generation and use, transportation, commercial and residential buildings, agriculture, natural and working lands, and waste and materials management. We will address the sources and sinks of emissions across the same 5-county geography as we did the previous baseline. Essentially, we're going to use that same template report, but with newer data, with a refined methodology based on what we've learned and the feedback we've received over the last couple of years. And that will be part of our CCAP. Greenhouse gas emissions projections, we did include those in the PCAP for both the 2030 and 2050 target years under a business as usual scenario and under scenarios where we implemented each of the priority measures in full. The CCAP must include revised business as usual scenario projection based on the updated inventory with the 2022 baseline year. We will also have implementation of each priority measure as well as a full plan implementation. That is, if we were to do everything that we outline in the priority measures, what would that look like in terms of emissions reduction? Greenhouse gas reduction targets. This was not required for the PCAP, but we have talked to this committee 2 years ago about reduction targets in the context of what do we want to, what is our aspiration? What are we trying to achieve ultimately by 2030 and by 2050? And so the policy committee back in 2022 in October did hear a presentation and provided endorsement of targets at that time. So we've done some preliminary work, but we want to collaborate with all of you again and bring forth the newer, more updated data to revisit those targets and to see if they still make sense or if we need to revise those. We want to ensure that our metropolitan statistical area targets are consistent with the United States formal commitments, which is a 50 to 52% reduction relative to 2005 baseline by 2030 and net zero by 2050. We also want to consider sector-based emission reduction targets. So if we look at our individual sectors, transportation, industry, electricity, agriculture, waste management, those types of things, should we have targets for emissions reductions by sector within our region? So this is something that's new for the CCAP, and we'll be coming back to you with this at future meetings. The reduction measures, these are the priority measures that we talked about. Now, the PCAP, as I showed you, had a full suite of implementation measures. There were 10 of them, and they're featured in the executive summary of the PCAP and discussed in detail within the main text of the document. And we had the projections of their impacts on emissions reductions as well. The CCAP has to include an update of these measures to meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets. We want to address the main greenhouse gas emission sectors. And then for each measure in the CCAP, we need to identify quantifiable greenhouse gas emissions reductions or enhancement of carbon sinks, the key implementing agency or agencies, and the milestones to obtain authority if we don't currently have authority, implementation schedule and milestones, expected geographic location and impact, as well as progress metrics, funding sources, and quantifiable cost estimates. We had a brief overview of these types of things in the PCAP. We need to have much more detail for the CCAP. The benefits analysis. This was not part of the PCAP. This is an assessment of greenhouse gas reduction measures benefits. So we're going to look at base year estimates of co-pollutants, including criteria pollutants and precursors. And we also want to look at anticipated co-pollutant emission reductions to meet targets. So what does this mean? It means if we reduce certain greenhouse gas emissions by eliminating certain sources, we can also reduce other pollutants that are unhealthy for the population, but not necessarily classified as greenhouse gas emissions. We also want to look at a broader assessment of greenhouse gas reduction measures benefits, including what are potential improvements to air quality, improvements to public health, economic development opportunity, climate resilience, et cetera. We need to quantify these co-pollutant reductions associated with the reduction measures, so we can't just talk about them in descriptive terms. We actually need to measure them in numbers. And then there also are potential disbenefits that may result from plan measure implementation. So there may be side effects, if you will, that are negative, and we need to be transparent about those potential side effects. In addition to a broad benefits analysis for the entire region, EPA has placed special emphasis on low-income and disadvantaged communities, which we shorthand as LIDACs. In the PCAP, we did identify those LIDACs, and at the previous meeting for External Affairs, Joel Ratner shared a map of those LIDACs within the 5-county region. The PCAP also did a recapitulation of the preliminary engagement of LIDAC stakeholders, so a lot of the engagement work we did last year touched on LIDACs. And we provided a qualitative assessment of greenhouse gas reduction measures' impact on LIDACs in the PCAP. But the CCAP needs to have a quantitative analysis of the extent to which greenhouse gas reduction measures will deliver co-pollutant emissions reductions and other benefits to LIDACs. So again, we need to quantify. We also need to expand our engagement efforts in LIDACs with focused guidance from representatives in those communities. This is really critical if we want ultimate buy-in from stakeholders. Workforce planning analysis was also not part of the PCAP, but is required for the CCAP. In the PCAP, we gave a very brief summary of the work that we have done around the comprehensive economic development strategy, because there is a workforce component in the SEDS. But the CCAP will require a detailed analysis of anticipated workforce shortages that could hinder achievement of our greenhouse gas reduction targets, identification of potential solutions and partners at various levels of geography equipped to help address those challenges. We want to build on the work of the SEDS for Northeast Ohio, so we have a good foundation. We want to build from that and integrate that into the CCAP, and then discuss priorities in accordance with greenhouse gas reduction measures. We also want to ensure that our analysis aligns with the U.S. Department of Labor's Good Jobs Principles. So there's potential for significant job growth around industries and technology related to the measures that we've described to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we need to analyze how well this region is equipped in terms of its workforce to step into those roles. And if not, if there are gaps, how are we going to address those gaps so that we can handle those challenges of new technologies and employment opportunity? So that's my analysis comparing the PCAP and the CCAP. Our focus going forward for the next year is on the CCAP. The NOACA and Cleveland team will meet with US EPA quarterly. The next progress report for the second quarter of this year, April, May, June, is due at the end of this month. We will continue to bring materials and information to you to talk about the CCAP development and the various content themes of the CCAP. Questions?
Any questions or comments? All right, thank you, Joe. Move on to the next one, which is a long-range travel plan forecasting model from Grace and Dr. Makarachi.
We go ahead and let Dr. Makarachi go right into the material. This is a follow-up to questions raised by this committee at the last meeting. Dr. Makarachi.
Good morning, thank you. As slide says, no action is requested. And we are there was a question last time when we talked about some issues, and there was a question how we estimate and how we use what's called the model in the travel demand model and how we use it. So we thought if we show some slides about how the model works and how we do that, then it will be helpful for you to understand this. But after 10 minutes presentation, I hope you will see how we do it, but not to become expert, because for my job security, I don't want all these guys become the modeling expert. But when we say modeling, is not this modeling. When we talk about modeling, they get some, and I stopped this video, and that's not the modeling we are talking about. We are talking about a black box, which we put the maps and data, and that box give us the traffic behavior. So again, another, in terms of definition, when we talk about modeling, there are different levels of the modeling. There's on the top macro level, which we look at the region. Obviously, you can see there's less details. When we talk about meso level, we have more details. And when we go to micro level, we simulate and we look at all the details. So what we have developed is between macro and meso level. I will come back to this, but there's a different, it's like when you talk about, you use glasses for the drinking water at the lunchtime, but if you want to hose your garden, you don't use glass, you use hose and you use buckets, and so different tool for a different purpose. So probably if it was your first time, which is not, but maybe when you go somewhere, you ask yourself these questions. What's the purpose of my trip? Where do I go to? Which mode do I take? And which route do I take? These are the 4 questions. Usually when you go somewhere new, or you go usually for work or anything, you ask this question. The NOACA travel forecasting model, we try to answer these questions for about 2 million residents of our region. That's the graphic of it, how we do this in terms of the trip generation, distribution, mode choice, trip assignment, all this, we use it, what data we use and what output we get, how we calibrate. I will explain this as I said, in a few slides. First thing is we look at the household and residents and people go to work, school, shopping, social. That's usually type of the many other trips. People travel and they go every day. And from origin usually is a house, they go to the employment center, shopping malls, schools, and hospitals and other locations. So that stage generates trips. So trips are generated from usually from houses so then how we estimate these trips? We look at the household size. We look at how many workers are in the household, how many cars, many other parameters that give us the household category. For example, a couple with a tiny baby is different to a family with 3 workers, and that different type of trips are generated from that household compared to a household with 3 adults each working. So there's 3 workers there, there's probably 1 worker there because of the young baby there. So there's a difference. For these categories, we have got different rates. But I want you to remember these red boxes all the way through the slides. So these red boxes, we have got some rates. Then we use it and we generate the trips for all the households, 900,000 households in our region. When we talk about households, we are not going to simulate any house, any building. We are looking at the neighborhood because the traffic inside that neighborhood I've highlighted in red is not important in terms of the congestion, in terms of the investment. That's the access, provide access from household, from building, from houses to the roads, main collectors, all this. But so that we summarize this to the one, we call it traffic analysis zone. We don't need to go to that detail. So trips are produced from this kind of households. It goes to another type of the TAZ or neighborhood, whether it's a work, whether it's a school, whether it's shopping. So when we go, for example, looking at the mall, we are not going to look at the inside in all this access, all the parking lot and everything, but that's not important in terms of investment, congestion, travel time. Those are not. We are looking at the whole area as a neighborhood and then looking at that. So then those generated trips attracted to some other shopping mall, employment center, then becomes trip distribution. So how many we are talking in our model? We have 9,000 production zone TAZs and 9,000 attraction. We are talking about every time we create any matrix is 81 million cell values. How many we produce of these? Probably, if I say hundreds, I'm not exaggerating. It's hundreds in the big computer, we produce all this for different purposes. How do we use that? If you are familiar with a standard gravity model and the gamma type functions, we use this. Again, you can see this red box. You will see we come back to this. So these trips are produced and distributed. Then the third question, when you are coming here, you are asking yourself, what mode I'm gonna take? That's the famous nested logic models, which is used for consumer behaviors, use many other fields in the social science as well. So that's what we use it. And we say, okay, if you look at maybe it's small, but you can see the mode choice, you can drive, then you have got the public transport or non-motorized, whether it's a walk, bike, drive alone, sharing with somebody, more than 2 people, using public transport, accessing just walking or accessing to all this is being modeled. So when somebody asks a question from the what mode I'm taking, he's going to go through this table and asking, which is called the mental model you use every day yourself. When you do this, we compare the cost, compare the parking cost, then compare the travel time with transit, then come back and say, I'm going to take my car. I'm not going to walk, it's too far. Then fourth question was, we assign those trips to the roads. That creates the congestion. You can see there's a more red is a more congested. Then we use different type of the equation to do that, to assign this to the trips. Okay, we do this, and obviously the numbers we use is, as you heard many times, is a garbage in, garbage out. We're trying to avoid this slide as much as not a garbage in and garbage out. We use the calibration and validation we called, and I give you one example. If you play dart and you threw this dart on the first time when you threw, you look at it and you go back and look at you haven't hit the target. So you come back and you say, if I hold my arm higher, if I add the speed, I'm gonna hit this. A few times you do this, and finally you learn how to do that. We do the same thing here. We start with that red boxes, the rates, then come back and adjust it to get better results, more realistic results. For example, when we do the calibration and validation for this, we use the census data, we use American Communities Service data, we use travel time, we take from the region, and we look at it like Northeast Ohio Travel Survey, which we are doing now this year after 10 years. So we use this data to adjust those, is exactly like what we do with when play the dart. We come back and we say, okay, this was far from the real numbers, then let's do it and adjust the numbers, adjust the parameter values, adjust the model, adjust the equation, then come back and get more realistic numbers. For the assignment, always I was asked whether we use the traffic counts. We don't use traffic counts in the model. We use the traffic counts to adjust the model. It's not if I have all these 100,000 links we have got in the model, and for all this, if you want to get all this counted, it's going to cost billions and billions. So we take a sample, like a sample, where you get the blood sample for your cluster or anything, we take the sample and we compare that with really, so we don't use the counts, we estimate the volume, then we compare it with the counts. And the counts should be more realistic and more unbiased data. That's why we do it every year in September, October. The schools are in operation, no holidays, no cold weather, no hot weather. So we try to be a more unbiased and more realistic numbers. So then we compare with this. We look at this is one table of the probably more than 10 tables we compare. We look at the freeway, and I've shown you here the ratio we get compared with the data we have got. So we are talking about comparing the 2,500 sometimes, the traffic volumes, traffic counts, and every year we do this for the last maybe 6-7 years. So we put them and we compare them. We can see as we get closer to one, that's much better, calibrated model, then validated and more reliable data we produce from here rather than just garbage in and garbage out. It's not just the cars. We look at the data from the transit as well. Every year, transit agencies provide us data. We ask them to give us the data. Then we compare data with the data produced by model. Again, we don't go to that details. We don't go to each station activities because first of all, there's no data. Secondly, again, we are not talking about that level of the investment, and that level is not. We are looking generally for the lines. For example, local bus services for the GCRTA, according to the data we got this year, is a 54,831. How much the model produces? 55,980, pretty close. That's a calibrated and validated model and reliable, we can use it. Or any other probably we have to work, or is more based on what they told me. Red line, for example, is a bit high, the model estimation. So we have to change a parameter to bring it down closer to what we have got. And this is 2023, but GCRTA told me is going to have increased this year. So that's the way we do look at each line and each services, health line, all this you can see in this table, and compare it and see which one we go. Again, some of them you can see the ratio is high because of again, we go to the micro level, like a local buses, that's difficult to adjust it and difficult to get exact. But major ones, we have got very good, but transit again is a difficult part. We have got the same thing for the bikes, same thing for the walking. And so all the modes are being calibrated. When we talk about model calibration and validation, we are actually trying to become more realistic data. And then we can, after calibration, when we use the data, when we were asked to provide a traffic volume on such a street, it comes from the calibrated model and has been adjusted and more reliable than even in my opinion, than the traffic counts. Because when we take the traffic counts on that day, we don't know, maybe on that day is a climate problem or accident in the nearby or anything. But when we take the counts, we are not sure, and we use that count, which should be adjusted based on the model which we are doing here. So this is going to be, this tool is a major tool for long range. We are going to use this one as we used before, and we continue to report to this committee and others on the board how we're going to do the long range and the model.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Dr. Makarachi?
I'm sorry if I missed this. The travel survey that was sent out, is that information an input to the model, or is it?
It's been used,
It's been
the travel survey, when we talk about, the sample of about 9,000, the
That's from the-
people show how many trips they have work trip, for example, they have generated. Then that rate is being used to get for whole region, how many trips is going to be generated in the region.
Okay.
Those are the data is very important, crucial to adjust, not to have a garbage in and garbage out.
And then one additional question. I know in past, there's been question on what future development is included there in certain things, and is it included, or is it really only when something's under construction that those big developments are included?
When we do the calibration and validation and do this is a existing condition. Then for the future, we have got all the development is going to happen. We put, for example, 2030, whatever in terms of the road, in terms of the land use development, we put it there and we use the model to run that for, and then when we say future scenarios is based on the calibrated model, based on the existing condition. But when we talk about 2030, 2040, 2050 is always, we have got any interchange we added to this, in the future we're going to add, or any development is going to be in the model.
So Lorain County is starting a pilot program on July 15th for microtransit in the cities of Lorain and Elyria. Will that be included in this study that you're doing?
We every maybe 6 months, every year, we look for any new development, and anything, if you let us, we can add to the model, yes.
All right, we would like that to be included in this study to see how many people are using the microtransit in those two cities.
If you could send me the information, we can add to model and run it and then look at the results.
Very good, thank you.
Just a question regarding, you say you're calibrating using the model, but you calibrate based off the traffic counts. How does that compare with the transit numbers? Because your model, all except for one category, inflated the model was higher than the actual data that was provided. How does that relate to vehicles? Are you seeing the model overestimates or underestimates the traffic?
Well, when we, before coming to look at the counts, we go through the mode choice. We calibrate the mode choice. Mode choice tell us how many, what percentage of these trips are done by the transit. When we come to the level of the streets and vehicle trips, we have got extracted the transit, extracted the walking, bike. So it's not just one looking at the counts. There are several levels of the calibration for each stage. I showed you on the red boxes. Every time we go to this, for example, for mode choice, when we do this, we put the parameters values, then we come back and say, okay, is it producing that table for the transit? Is it accurate, or we have to change it? So when we come to each stage, is being calibrated, is not just the counts. So whether it's overestimated, we try to be based on as much as possible based on the counts. For example, 2019, we had a count, but that was before COVID. After 2020, we didn't do any 2020 because nobody was, the data was biased and everybody was working from home. Then 2021, we look at it as a comparing to the before and after COVID. Then gradually right now, this year and last year is a more reliable data, but we have added to based on the survey, we have added to the model is about 11%. They're not coming in the work trip. They're not coming out. They're working from home. In the 2019, that percent was about 4%. Again, based on what the census, we got the census. So increasing 4% to 11% reduces 7% of the trips. As you see, the less congested here. So we are trying not to overestimate or underestimate the volume. We try to be more realistic in terms of the comparing the counts.
Yeah, I get that. But I guess my question is, based on your results, that the slide you showed that the model overestimated based on the counts that were provided. What I'm asking is the vehicular traffic a similar type ratio or not?
Is a similar. I mean, always we can't get exact. Always we have got 10% up and down margin of error. That's a.
But is the vehicular traffic underestimating or overestimating?
I'm not. Why should be overestimated?
No, I'm just, you're saying you took traffic counts. So if you run your model, is it showing that the vehicular traffic, like on this?
Sometimes overestimated, sometimes underestimated.
So
depends on for example, on the minor roads, on the minor collectors is overestimated.
What I'm looking at is based on this, the vehicular traffic for this graph, typically they're slightly over to under on the model, whereas the transit was all over. I'm just wondering if the model needs to be adjusted.
Well, the reason why the transit was over, because that was 2023. And I was talking to GI, Mary Bass and others, they were saying the numbers of the ridership is increasing. So that's why we kept this one is a bit overestimated. Because it was 2023, and actually it was based on previously was based on 2021, 2022. And actually I couldn't believe how much the ridership went down. So and actually I called GCRT and asked them, is that real data you're talking about? They said, yes. But now it's coming up every year, is increasing, but it still is not the level of the before COVID. So for that reason, for your question, yes, we kept this one overestimated, not the traffic. Traffic is, again, we are coming back to trying to be same. Is a little bit of, is not just the science, it's a bit of art here as well.
It was just noted that the transit numbers seem to be inflated and the vehicular traffic seemed to be underestimated.
Deliberately inflated to cover for 2024. Possibly they told us there are more ridership in the 2024.
It'd probably also be fair to say that, transit, you can get real-time data because we're tracking it every day versus a traffic count has to be done at spot times. So it's a different sort of calibration of data also.
That's another, yes, correct point, yes.
Good conversation. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, we will move on to implementing the SAVE plan, speeding and pedestrian safety. Kessa Turnbull.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Am I high enough up for the mic? Always a good start. So no action is requested, but we are looking for your input on policies and programs that we could implement here to help implement these emphasis areas. And then versions of this presentation were previously presented to the councils and the transportation subcommittee, but this one has been customized at the end specifically to get that input from you folks specifically. So the purpose of the SAVE plan is to save lives in the region by identifying actions to reduce the most severe crashes. Traffic deaths and injuries can be prevented with appropriate planning, policies, and programs with a long-term goal of 0 fatalities or serious injuries. The 6 E's of transportation safety are engineering, which is design elements that promote safety for all, education to provide travelers with the knowledge and skills to be safe, enforcement to encourage travelers to obey traffic laws, emergency medical service to respond quickly and with effective coordination, evaluation to measure the effectiveness and make changes accordingly, and equity to balance transportation options and access for travelers across all modes. The 10 emphasis areas of the SAVE plan are intersections, roadway departures, young and older drivers, impaired driving, motorcycles, distracted driving, and bicycles. And then today we will specifically be talking about speeding and pedestrians. In 2021, there were over 7,000 pedestrians killed and over 60,000 injured in traffic crashes. On average, a pedestrian was killed every 71 minutes and injured every 9 minutes. Nationally, they account for 17% of all traffic fatalities in the country. And as you can see in the blue circle, Ohio ranks towards the low end of the middle range, with 12% of total traffic fatalities being pedestrians. Dangerous by Design just released its new 2024 update at the end of May, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Crashes don't impact everyone evenly, so people walking in lower income areas are killed at far higher rates. Pedestrian amenities are often least available in the most disadvantaged places. Fewer sidewalks, crosswalks, and other traffic calming measures make walking more dangerous. Wide straightaways and lacking streetscapes actively encourage speeding. As you can see in the graph on the left, there is a direct correlation between low-income census tracts and increased pedestrian fatalities, with the fatality rate in census tracts with income between 15 and 25,000 being more than 4 times higher than in areas with a median income over 100,000. While the pattern holds true with the updated report, it's important to note that all the numbers on this chart are higher than they were 2 years ago. Every income level has a higher chance of being killed than they used to, and the all population rate has increased from 1.9 to 2.06 per 100,000 people. Between 2010 and 2022, pedestrian deaths rose 75%, especially during COVID, and Native American and Black Americans are disproportionately likely to die while walking. In the last 2 years, they have become even more disproportionately high, while Asian and Pacific Islanders' likelihood has actually decreased, and non-Hispanic whites have held essentially steady. Now, getting into speeding specifically, it's a crime that we all commit from time to time, but how bad is it really? The answer is very. Nationally, there were over 12,000 speeding fatalities in 2022, and they made up almost 1/3 of all traffic fatalities. That's over 33 people per day dying from speeding. Statewide, there were over 300 fatalities, shown in this map, with Cuyahoga County the clear loser at 48, due to speeding in 2023. Regionally, we had 68 speeding fatalities in 2023. We've already had 28 in 2024 as of July 1st. The faster a car goes, the less chance a pedestrian has of surviving a crash. Only a little extra speed makes a big difference. If you're hit by a car going 23 miles per hour, you only have a 10% chance of dying. But if you're hit at 42, say in a 35 zone, that skyrockets up to 50%. And if you're unlucky enough to be hit at 58, you have a 90% chance of death. I just had an instructor bring up a really interesting point about these stats though. These probabilities that are commonly used in the safety industry were based on studies in the early 2000s or even the 90s. At that point in time, our vehicle fleet was drastically smaller on average. So these fatality rates are probably undercounting the reality of SUVs and pickup trucks becoming our best-selling vehicles. We literally see less when we drive faster. Our cone of vision shrinks so that we only see people who are directly in front of us and aren't prepared to stop for someone stepping off a sidewalk. Our reaction time and braking time both increase as we go faster, so while we can stop in only 60 feet at 20 miles per hour, that stopping distance nearly doubles for 30, which, let's remember, is less than the 35 miles per hour speed limit many of us have in our cities. The same caveat that I gave a couple of slides ago about larger vehicle sizes leading to worse outcomes applies here as well, because if you have the larger vehicles, it takes them a longer time to stop, even if their reaction time doesn't increase. One item that has been getting a lot of press recently to be on the lookout for is the banning of right turns on red in downtown districts. This was actually originally a fuel-saving measure rather than either a safety or even a throughput measure. From its beginning, it has required cars to come to a complete stop and yield to pedestrians, but many motorists don't comply with these requirements, especially at intersections with wide turning radii, and they just do a rolling stop instead. Drivers' focus is on the cars approaching from the left rather than pedestrians from the right, and they often block crosswalks for a better view. No turn on red signs also have an option from the MUTCD to be used with specific times of highest pedestrian traffic or with leading pedestrian intervals for maximum protection. So there's a major lack in studies on the impacts of right turns on red. The National Highway and Transportation Safety Administration's last report was in 1994, which, for the record, I was 2 years old for, and covered less than 5 years of data across only 4 states. Pretty sad. Now, the National Motorists Association study of California found that 96% of injuries from right turns on red were minor, but you have to wonder, what was their goal in that study? In 2023, the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency found that right turns on red were responsible for only 1% of all injury crashes, but 20% of bike and pedestrian crashes overall involve turning vehicles. Instead of emotional advocacy, we really need to do some actual studies to provide data for decision-making. I have. What is the vehicular turning movement at an intersection? How many crashes are actually due to right turn on red? How many bicyclists and pedestrians are at an intersection? How much more comfortable do bikes and peds feel without it? How much less often are crosswalks blocked without it? How much time is added to a commute or delivery? How much more fuel is used, and what emissions does this lead to? Right now, through the end of this month, the NHTSA is running Speeding Catches Up With You, which is a nationwide social norming campaign. And another example of a campaign that NOACA could replicate if we wanted is a pledge to slow down, which was done in Florida. There's not a lot of great data for it. It got about 1,000 signatures out of a region with about 800,000 people. And it's unclear if it led to any crash reductions, but it's cheap to implement, good for awareness, and it could be coupled with more active measures. We're also beginning to get some real movement on this in our region. Lakewood's Lake Avenue speed decrease went into effect on June 3rd, decreasing it from 35 to 30 miles per hour, and Cleveland is introducing legislation to do the same along their 1.7 mile portion. ODOT is running a Design for 25 program, And NOACA is working with Ohioans for Safe Streets to give local communities greater control over their speed limits, particularly as it pertains to lowering them. Another example of what we could do would be a safe driver challenge based on a telematics app or onboard device that tracks hard braking, speeding, rapid acceleration, phone use, idling, or seatbelt use. It could be based on highest score or the greatest differential between of how much you improve. And then we could do that for our region or per county. Another example would be a traffic calming contest, which could be between communities or counties to implement short-term, low-cost, and scalable local projects. And it would be based on either the number of projects or it could be the square feet affected. The emphasis would be trying something, anything, to generate data on what works and what doesn't. Successful projects would create resident support, demonstrate feasibility, and encourage implementation and funding. And while there are some potential equity issues with this, because more well-off communities could do more projects and win more prizes, that could be potentially be addressed through a stipend for disadvantaged and environmental justice communities to do their own demonstrations. And I just want to do a plug for our street supplies program here, because that would be a great way for no cost to do some tactical urbanism projects like painting an intersection in the city of Lorraine, or putting out curb bump outs, painting your crosswalks, even experimenting with closing a street, or another example of painting your crosswalks. NOACA will continue to educate people on the dangers of high speeds, even when they're legal, and the need to slow down to protect people outside of cars. We'll also continue advocating for reduced speeds, even though it's hard, because getting from point A to B shouldn't mean risking anyone's life. And staff will research the right turns on red impacts on pedestrian and cyclist crashes to propose a policy based on a technical approach. Now I'm really hoping that some of you have some thoughts about these potential policies and programs.
Just curious on, I know the right turn on red is a big issue. I think that sometimes we have a bigger issue with the left turns on green. And I know in Florida and other places, they have a flashing arrow so that you can proceed with caution, but it's not just the cycle of just the arrow, because you've got people looking straight ahead to see if they can go in front of a car. They're not looking to the left to see who's in the crosswalk. So I don't know if there's any research on left turns at all.
If anything, that is even less research than the right turns. It's another need. And yeah, we'd probably be open to that.
So this was a good presentation, really great information. Thank you for all the updated data. What is NOACA doing right now to educate community on these issues? I mean, I think it's helpful for the board and others to understand, but what are we currently doing to kind of get the word out or get people more aware?
We have relationships with safe street coalitions in the communities and the counties.
Okay.
That's really about it right now. And it is one of my goals to figure out how to do a lot more. Since I am the only safety planner at NOACA currently, there's a distinct limit on how much I can do, but so I'm trying to figure out where to best dedicate resources.
Do you have a informal like committee or group that maybe you could pull together? Because I feel like, you know, we at the county and cities might have resources and people that would be willing to help you, you know, really focus and brainstorm a little bit more on that. Is that an opportunity or?
The reason we're bringing it to the committee is precisely because we want to start taking action. And one of the things we've thought of, for example, and we've done some mock-ups, billboards on speed and pedestrians. And so we have been thinking about it, and we are looking at the original SAVE plan and how to execute the recommendations in that SAVE plan.
And it's worth noting that we also do the biannual community safety reports, which right now we are deep in the depths of.
Actually, that's a great point. So we have begun doing those. This is our second one that we completed. And we're trying with predictive analyses to assist the communities in defining those dangerous spots before an accident actually happens. So that's been a big push of ours.
Comment.
Mayor Blackwell. Sorry.
This is an excellent presentation, so timely. This is so needed. We had a traffic calming presentation in Maple Heights, and I want to thank NOACA for being a part of that when we have that, because I am addressing speed, as many of you are, as well as stop sign blowing. So much so that we just instituted 10 speed tables on our most traveled streets after doing about a year of studying. But this is a huge issue. And so what I'd like to, as I'm looking for best practices and I'm looking for things that I can leave this meeting and immediately implement, speeding is a huge issue. And many of us as mayors also serve as safety directors. So people are looking to us for answers as our police are solving the more serious crimes. So we did have the suggestion from NOACA, which is a speed strip on East 141st that separates Maple Heights and Garfield Heights as people try to avoid Transportation Boulevard. Painting those street lines made a huge difference. And then the second step was to put in the speed tables, but they're really speed humps. We've seen a significant reduction in speed. I agree, the right turn on red is scary. As a grandmother who had her grandson hit by a car 2 years ago, because someone blew a stop sign. I mean, this is, because it's my job as the mayor, as a grandmother, it was extremely upsetting as we all followed him to the hospital. So seeing that fatality, and of course, having a community that's predominantly African-American that walk to work. And so they're more vulnerable because they're trying to cross the street to maybe catch the bus. I've had 2 bus shelters blown out as people have gone through the bus stop, and by the grace of God, they've missed the people standing in the bus shelter, which isn't even safe. Of course, through planning and zoning, we require bollards when there's daycare facilities. There's so much that has to be done around this subject to keep people safe. People that are walking to work because they cannot afford a car, disproportionate numbers of those communities that can afford a car. And the SUVs and trucks are very dangerous, and they're the ones that almost are running me off the road. So what I'll say in conclusion to a lot of emotion I have around this subject and the things that we've tried, NOACA's been a partner, so I do want to thank you for the suggestion of painting those lines. I'd like more help, and I immediately want to touch base with someone next to find out what else I can do with the safe street supply. I've seen it, but I'm obviously not taking advantage of it because I am serious about doing what I can do. The speed tables have been great, and of course, people, not everybody wants one on their street, but our data has shown where the spots are. We go back and forth with NOACA with my engineer at Rancho Grande Valley that we can't put a stop sign here, we can't put a stop sign there. We're building new homes, and like the story in I think it's Cleveland Heights / University Heights, the Heights, the guy with the rock that they keep running into their home. Well, a $250,000 home's just been built, same place. 2 houses have been taken out, and now a developer builds another home at the end of 141st. $250,000, and she's begging for a guardrail. Well, we know that because we had we had ODOT representative at that meeting that you just can't put a guardrail everywhere and you can't put a rock everywhere. And so we need best practices. You've given an absolutely phenomenal, impactful, thought-provoking presentation about a very, very serious problems in so many communities. I want to see it go beyond these slides and this presentation, and I'd like to know, away from this body, because I don't want to hold everyone up, what I can take back to Maple Heights from that supply closet immediately to begin to make some more impactful changes and save the people that are victims on the street as they're trying to get to the bus stop, trying to get to the grocery store. You know, I have Mapletown people are shopping at the grocery store and trying to get across the street with their groceries. And I'm scared to death as they're trying to to cross Broadway, which is impossible. I had someone walk with Broadway with me because we're so close to the Bedford Auto Mile, and we clocked trucks trying to get to the highway going 48 miles an hour on a 25-mile zone where people are trying to walk on that Broadway corridor. So I know I said a lot, but this was so thought-provoking. I'm still remembering my grandson lying in the street he's fine. He's actually about to graduate from the fire academy, so he got through it. But scary. And some grandmothers are not so lucky. I was lucky. I was blessed. Thank you.
Mayor Blackwell, thank you very much for your comments, and we certainly will look to even better promote the street supplies program and specifically perhaps focusing it on safety. So we will do that. I did want to share, since you shared your heartfelt story, my 76-year-old grandmother, it's been many years now, was hit by a truck in a turn on red. And she was in rehab for about 6 months, permanently disabled, lived to be 97. But nevertheless, the only thing that changed was a sign now that no longer allows turn on red at this particular intersection. But it's got to be better than that. It's got to, something has to happen before a 76-year-old grandmother or a grandson gets hit by a car.
Thank you both for sharing those. I think we all take pause when we hear personal stories. My question is probably for Mr. Pecori, so we know this designed for 25. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the timeline and what is the scope of that work?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if, Carrie, are you aware of that, the status of that?
I can say that it is currently, I believe, 8 pilot communities, and that it has begun, I'm pretty sure, and that they are looking to expand it in future years.
Okay, well, if you're looking to expand it, let us know. Thank you very much.
I would also offer that ODOT be willing to vet some of these best practices, because I did notice there were some with the painting of the different colors on the crosswalks, and Federal Highway has some, I guess, concerns with some of that, friction, if you're not using traffic paint, things like that. So we'd be willing to help kind of look at those best practices and help vet those.
Thank you.
In most municipalities, the building commissioner is in charge of maintaining and regulating the private property. The service director and the engineer are responsible for the right-of-way. A lot of municipalities, the engineering staff are either part-time or contractual, and they really just maintain it. And the engineers really don't look at intersections unless there's new construction on. What is interesting that I found out was that who's responsible for the safety of the streets are the police department. And within the police department, it's the traffic unit. And the traffic unit is usually staffed by the most junior members of the police department. Those junior members of the police department typically don't stay long and they move on. Recently, I engaged with them relative to, identifying the worst intersections relative to safety. And they had a very surprising statistics. And also, like any good patient, they sort of knew what the solution was in many instances, had good suggestions. But they typically do not interact with the engineering staff. And as you know, most city engineers don't have any traffic management experience either. So we ended up having to go out to a traffic engineering company to actually review some of the suggestions from the police department. But there is a big disconnect relative to the people that are in charge of safety on the streets and the people that actually are in charge of reconfiguring those intersections. They're not connecting. The police are just taking those accidents reports, they're filing them away, And typically those police individuals, graduate and move on to the detective bureau. And the engineers really aren't seeing them. So just a little note.
Thank you. Just to follow up, we have an accident, an individual who's trained to review accidents, and she has provided a lot of good feedback. So an excellent point. I'm wondering, as you evaluate whether it's TLCI implementation grants or other grant programs that come through NOACA, do you have a protocol that would award, say, extra points for safety measures that are included in those projects being submitted for funding?
The answer is yes. Our criteria for both TLCI studies and implementation include safety as a component. But your point actually makes me think that like we have an implementation program for TLCIs, maybe there's an implementation program for safety that we should consider. And specifically target intersections and other recommendations that come out of our community safety reports, working with the communities.
And in the community reports, they do include a prioritization of the predicted most estimated intersections and arterial segments.
Thank you. Listening to the report, it's sad that we are in this country where based on the amount of money or the lack thereof, you're more likely to get hit or killed by a car. This shouldn't be happening. It really shouldn't. So, and I agree with Tom, sometimes you just don't have that expertise. But if I look around this room, we have planners, we have engineers, we have people with common sense too. And I think that's what we need to do is we need to all start getting involved, as Mayor Blackwell said. Let's start looking into this a little bit harder. I've gone to a lot of urban areas. Traffic calming does a heck of a lot. Closing down some roads or making them one way not only saves lives, but sometimes spurs economic development. You shut down a few streets, you put in a few restaurants and entertainment, and you've solved problems. So I think there's a lot out there, and I'll be the first one to jump on any subcommittee or anything to help go through this and bring up some more ideas, because again, I'm not an engineer and I don't want to be one. God bless you guys, Andy, but I do have some ideas that may help, and I think a lot of us do. So maybe we can come together at some point and just start giving, and maybe give you a clearinghouse for ideas to calm traffic and do some of these things. So again, I'm willing to get involved in it. And I think it's very important. And I'm glad we had a little time at the end of the meeting to discuss this. Thank you.
I feel like it's worth mentioning that, if you want to get involved, one way you can do it right now is we have the Safety and Operations Council. I present at it more quarters than not.
I just want to thank everyone for the enthusiasm that they've shown for this very, very important topic. It is the policy committee's role to facilitate the development of new policies and programs that allow us to address issues just like this. So thank you.
Again, through the chair, if there's one big takeaway, it was a good presentation because there's a lot of stuff in there. Again, thought-provoking was, I think, an appropriate description. But the big takeaway is the emotional advocacy, keeping that out of it. I think you're going to find that's going to be incredibly valuable, because when you start talking about trucks and SUVs, those of us who make use of those for personal and professional reasons, we're going to contend that, and also I'm going to speak from also a law enforcement perspective. Larger vehicles tend to have higher visibility, both seeing what's around you and being seen. When you get into communities where they have lower incomes, typically it's because there's a higher density of vehicles and people are stepping out from between vehicles. That's where a lot, if you look at the analysis of what the accidents actually are, and I'm going to tell you, in law enforcement, speeding is speeding. And it is not popular to be writing tickets for speeding. But there does need to be an enforcement component. There needs to be a support of that. Something that might be of value and they've become much more affordable these days are these portable speed indicators that are mobile. Some are solar, some are just rechargeable. We might want to consider something like that in part of the NOACA inventory because people don't realize how fast they're going. And I will tell you with absolute certainty, having been on patrol, small cars tend to dart in and out of traffic because they can. And larger vehicles that have towing capability, they have excess braking capability because they are designed to tow other vehicles. And when they're not towing, they can stop in as short a period of time and distance as a smaller vehicle. In fact, in many cases, and if you want to go for a ride after this meeting, I'll show you, they can stop quicker. Larger tires and efficiency, there are technologies that allow a greater efficiency. So there are things that we can do, but I don't want to see safety turning into, we can save the environment by greater fuel economy, because I heard those things sprinkled into the presentation. So those little editorial things do tend to show some biases. And I think, again, the most powerful thing I heard in all of this, take the emotion out of it. And you're spot on. And I think we've got a lot of potential here, but speeding is going to be the problem because reaction times go down dramatically. And when you see somebody walking out from between a vehicle, you've got a fraction of a second to respond. So, a lot of times people just don't have awareness. They get that heavy foot going and don't realize, oh, I'm 10 over, I'm 15 over. So maybe just a few little, out in Lake County, we have a lot of traffic trailers, but we've also got a lot of pole-mounted traffic indicators to show the speed that you're going. So it might not be a bad idea, though. I think there's some advocacy there that could, you want a takeaway that you can put into your neighborhood? There it is. And then people just realize, oh, I'm speeding. So just want to throw that out there. And by the way, you can program so there's an upper limit. So if somebody wants to see how fast they can go, it stops that. So just throw that out there because that was one of the negatives also. But thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ma'am.
Now, the statistics are out there on those intersections, and I thought the implementation grant just take the 10 worst intersections that are causing these within your jurisdictions, and then doing implementation grants with a traffic management engineer that could offer some suggestions and obviously some money. Sometimes those fixes are expensive for cities to implement. So I thought that was a very good suggestion.
Yeah, I think what I've observed, especially in the higher density areas, where you've got a lot of kids riding their bikes, not necessarily playing in the street, but in and out of the driveways and so forth. The speed tables, though, I think are, from what I've seen, probably most effective. They're generally well marked. They're coming. I've really never seen anything else work better. It's a shame you watch the kids. I don't know where the parents are, but you watch the kids playing in the street, and then all of a sudden the car's coming down 40, 45 miles an hour recklessly, and feel bad for the kids. So I think the only way you're really going to do it, obviously more police presence, but how many police officers are you really going to have on the road at any given time to sit and watch for this stuff? It's tough. So the speed tables, I think, from what I've seen, probably work best.
This is what happens when we have extra time, but it's very, very good. I would add to the discussion and probably an area to pursue is distracted driving. In cars, you see people, they are multitasking in their vehicles. Phones are one thing, but it's a nice cup of coffee, it's makeup, it's children, it's a number of things. And so I think as a part of awareness or education would be focusing a bit on distracted driving and what it creates. We recently, in fact, just a couple days ago, we deployed several of these speed cameras. We had several of them, but we deployed several more. And what we've found to be really effective in neighborhoods is we shut them down and we run them so that we can see real data, because the minute they're on and they're flashing, then everyone does what we want them to do. But we've collected some really good data that way to share with residents. Many times when we're ticketing the neighbors, the individuals who live on that street or in close proximity. But the data collection, when you turn them off, has been invaluable to us with residents and others. So we just sent it out, and I was just looking at it. There were lots of comments, lots of very positive comments from our residents. Of course, everyone wants that and a speed table. So we'll get working on that. Thank you.
Not to drag this out, but I just do want to add, part of this committee that Mayor Ali has decided that he's going to work on. I'm going to just let him lead and see what he does. I'll jump in when he needs my help. But, you know, insurance companies are giving reductions if you put this device in your in your car. So perhaps there is some partnering, some data we can pull from there when you say that people don't realize they're speeding. But if we know that your insurance, what is it, 10 or 12%, whatever it is, if you put this device in your car that monitors how you accelerate and hit your brakes, perhaps there's something there. We know, you know, I'm at the age now, AARP has some data. There's just so much that I think we can get at to have a non-emotional response, okay? Let's call it passion. So we'll take that out, because people that are passionate stay committed. So the passion adds to the commitment. So I'll just say that. And sometimes it gets our attention. It's something we don't forget because this was this life-changing thing. But I think perhaps there's a partnership with that we can work to see how do we incentivize people to put this device in, to give them an awareness. There has to be a significant education portion. We've seen the whole Kia thing where people are going high speed. I have no high speed chases in my city. We know I ended up in the news and we're still in litigation. So how do we address all of these things as a transportation organization? I did it for safety reasons, because innocent people were not hurt, but their cars were, they could have been hurt in a high speed chase. And the result is the bad guy gets away and I've got all this damage and it's bad public relations. So how do we address these things where we keep people safe with speed? Sometimes, you know, we're speeding to catch the bad guy. There's data that these insurance companies are doing to offer this incentive. And they're saying that people are more conscious and better drivers when they know how they're driving. Speed tables, I'm here to tell you, the signage works. We have those cameras, we put them in, and they wait until they pass the camera and then they start again. So we've done that. We know there's the discussion about roundabouts that slows people down, but it's confusing. Sometimes it can cause accidents. This is such a big issue. It's such a big issue. And this is a challenge. And these are our this is an award-winning project. NOACA wants to be known as the doesn't take land away or not some conspiracy organization about climate control, but we solve issues. This is it. This is the project where we get the respect that we deserve because we impact lives right away. And the last thing I'll say, at P&Z, we require ballots, right, for daycares. Perhaps when RT is at the table, we need to find out what they can do, because the bus stop on the street is just this much space. So someone's trying to get around, so when they end up hitting someone at a bus stop, what can we do to ensure safety at a bus shelter? That's a discussion. Is it bollards? Is it they sit further back? Because those people are very vulnerable, just like the kids starting in out of traffic or on their bike. There's just so much we have to get to. And I'm just so passionate, not emotional, so passionate about addressing it and really leaving this membership on this board with something we can implement and begin to make impactful changes right away. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a great discussion. Any other closing thoughts before we move on?
Real
All right.
quick, Vance, thank you. That was a real nice co-chair speech. Thank you.
I do want to thank Kessa Turnbull for a terrific presentation.
There are no more reports and updates. So is there any old business? Any new business? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. Move a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next meeting is Friday, October 11th at 10. How you doing?
In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests, the public, and the recording of the meeting, please be sure to speak into the microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the gray button on top of them. They are on when the light is blue. Meeting minutes from the April 12th, 2024 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? If not, can I have a motion to approve? Got a motion, a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. Subcommittee updates, Air Quality Subcommittee, Brian Skowalski.
Hello?
Okay.
Hi. Just the Quality Subcommittee, we are keeping a close eye on ozone data for this year, and potentially could be moving to serious non-attainment. And after, depends on the rest of how the year pans out this summer. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Transportation Subcommittee, Mary Beth speaking.
The report in the packet is good.
Okay, thank you. And the Water Quality Subcommittee, Kristen. Her report, the summary can be found in the packet as well. Public comments, has anyone signed in? No speakers today? Next on the agenda, is there any executive director's report?
No executive director's report today.
All right. We will move on to action items. First quarter state fiscal year 2025 project planning reviews. Sarah White, please.
Sorry about that. Good morning. My name is Sarah White, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about our project planning reviews for the first quarter of the new state fiscal year. Action being requested is to recommend this item to our executive committee, which would then consider for replacement on the September Board of Directors agenda. This was previously presented to our Transportation Subcommittee and then Transit, BPAC, and Operations Advisory Councils, Safety and Operations Advisory Councils. So a little bit of information of why we do project planning review. It gives us the ability to look at proposed projects to make sure they achieve NOACA's vision and goals, and also to ensure that they're consistent with our planning requirements and all of the oversight requirements of our agencies. So the review involves NOACA staff review and comment, comments from committees, subcommittees, and advisory councils, an intergovernmental review and consultation. So these new projects are sent out to communities which may be affected, and they can give us their comments back, support, concerns, etc. And then we also post them on our website for review. And this illustration here shows where the project planning review falls in the overall review of projects. So the top, we have our proposed projects, and now we're in the review stage. So the first project for this quarter we're taking a look at is for the Lake Metro Parks Lakefront Phase 2 Trail. This will be Phase 2 in Painesville Township. And it will be to construct a 10-foot wide path for 900 feet, which will start at the end of phase 1. The total cost is expected to be 1.4 million, and NOACA has committed funds from our CRP program, and there's also federal earmarks, and any remaining amounts will be provided by Lake Metro Parks. Here's a map showing the phase 2 of this project. So as you can see, phase 1 is complete. They have had a ribbon cutting, and it's able to be utilized. And so this piece is a bit smaller than phase 1, but this is 900 feet beginning at the end of phase 1. All right, the second project is phase 3 of the same lakefront path, and beginning in Paynesville Township and going to the edge of Fairport Harbor. So this will be the continuation of that 10-foot wide path for 6,000 more feet at the end of phase 2. This project is expected to be 2.3 million. Again, NOACA has committed CRP funds to this project. So here's a more pulled out scale picture. So of course we have phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3 will complete the full link from Paynesville Township Park to the east down to Fairport Harbor Village to the west. And then our third and final project for this quarter is the Broadway Cycle Track located in the city of Lorain. Lorain is the project sponsor. And this will be, the project entails construction of a cycle track from West 9th to East 28th along Broadway in the city of Lorain. And that's expected to be about 1.35 miles. NOACA has committed carbon reduction funds to this as well, around 1.5 million. And here is a map showing the beginning and end of that proposed cycle track, starting up closer to downtown Lorain and going further into the community, the neighborhoods in the south. And this would allow more access to the downtown amenities along the lake. For next steps, we will be forwarding any comments that you may have to project sponsors so they can take a look and incorporate them accordingly. So we would request that you recommend this item to the executive committee for consideration for the September Board of Directors agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Brennan.
A second, please?
Second.
Second here. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Sarah, first quarter state fiscal year 2025 plan tip amendments.
Okay. So now we'll just move right into the next step of our project review and go into plan and tip amendments for the first quarter of this state fiscal year. We are requesting that, like the previous item, this would be recommended to the executive committee for placement on the September 2024 Board of Directors agenda. This was also presented to the Transportation Subcommittee and then the Transit, BPAC, and Safety and Operations Advisory Councils. So taking a look at the illustration again, in the teal, project planning review is what we just spoke about, but now we've moved on to the long-range plan and tip amendments. So adding new projects to the long-range plan or tip, or amending projects that are already within those plans. So the first tip amendment, which would be adding this new project we just spoke about in the last presentation again, the Lake Metro Parks Phase 3. So this would include carbon reduction program funds again, and it is being amended because it is a new project. We'll be adding this to NOACA's long-range plan and our TIP. And then similarly, the City of Lorraine cycle track on Broadway, again, a new project. We will be giving carbon reduction funds, and it will be amended to the long-range plan and to the TIP. Next, we will be looking at projects that are already on the TIP, but for a number of reasons, they need to be amended. So the first is in Cuyahoga County, the Garfield Parkway Bridge. So this will be to replace the bridge over Mill Creek, and it's sponsored by the Cleveland Metro Parks. So it would be expected to take place in this fiscal year. And we do need to amend this to the plan because we are reclassifying it into a single project from a group project. So we can do some, the project can have some coordination with other existing projects for traffic purposes. Next, we have the Cuyahoga Interbelt curve relocation. This is sponsored by the Ohio Department of Transportation. And within this, these TIP years, this would be preliminary engineering and detailed design, preliminary environmental engineering. We're requesting to amend the project cost, phasing, and funding commitments to this project in the TIP. Next, we have sponsored by the City of Beechwood, Richmond Road signals. So this will replace signals and upgrade technologies along Richmond Road. We are asking for an amendment because the scope has been expanded. And also NOACA previously awarded congestion mitigation and air quality funds to this project. So just for some information. The next project is the Rockside Road bridges over the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad and the Cuyahoga River. This project is sponsored by the Cuyahoga County Department of Public Works and also includes STBG grants administered by NOACA. We are requesting an amendment to the TIP because there are new funding commitments in the form of Garvey bonds. So that is pending SIB loan and Garvey execution. And another note about this was amended to NOACA's TIP at the June Board of Directors meetings, but it will now be added to the state TIP. This project is also sponsored by ODOT, and it is a major rehab on 77 in Cuyahoga Heights. So this will replace existing pavement and median barriers and also do some shoulder widening. We are requesting amendment because the project costs due to inflationary reasons has increased above the allowable threshold. So we're just amending the cost in the TIP. And the next project is also from ODOT and will replace the CSX Railroad Bridge over 77 south of Grant Avenue. So this is in Cuyahoga Heights, and we do have additional project funding commitment in the form of a Garvey bond, and the cost has increased for this project, and those are the reasons for amending the TIP. And then we have this project is another project on 77 sponsored by ODOT. This is a major rehab from Grant to Broadway in Cleveland and the villages of Newburgh Heights and Cuyahoga Heights. So we've put forth this project for an amendment in the TIP due to a new phase, construction phase being added, and then a new funding source also being added to this project. And we've already spoken about this project already, but this is phase 2 of the Lake Metro Parks Lakefront Trail. This one is a little different than the previous ones. It's already in the tip, but we are requesting an amendment to update the project cost and scope. And then the last project for amendment within the tip is a rehab on Interstate 90 in Lake County. So this will be from Kirtland Road to Morley Road and will affect Willoughby, Menor, Kirkland Hills, and Concord Township. The reason for amendment is inflation, again, has pushed the cost above the allowable threshold. So we'll just be making that project cost update in the tip. So a quick summary, the total cost of the new projects proposed to be amended to the tip, the plan and tip is $4 million. And then the total cost of the program projects already in the tip with presented amendments would be $639.9 million. Funding for these projects in the tip is committed and planned from a variety of sources, which include federal, state, and local. And any federal funding is provided through the Federal Highway Administration or Federal Transit Administration and will be administered through ODOT. Pending board approval, these amendments will be incorporated into the NOACA Long Range Plan, but also the statewide tip and NOACA tip.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
Make the
Deborah, second?
good second.
Okay, any discussion?
Question, with the I-77, two separate projects plus a bridge, will those be bid together, same contractor, same time? Will those be coordinated, those three projects? Thank you.
Yeah.
We are still working on that. We, had a bid earlier this year, came in quite high. So we're looking at how to coordinate those projects. Basically, it's going to depend on the available money, but the inflationary cost required us to make the adjustments.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. Lorraine County FPA and the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District Southwest FPA boundary and prescription modification request on South Boone Road in Columbia Township. Sarah Stanzi, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Stanzi, and I'm a Water Quality Planner 1 here at NOACA. Today, we have one FPA and prescription modification request, which involves the Lorain County and Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, or NERSD Southwest, FPA boundaries and prescriptions along South Boone Road in Columbia Township. The Lorain County Sanitary Engineer is requesting the modification of the Lorain County FPA by transferring 26 parcels totaling 62.55 acres along South Boone Road to the NERSD Southwest FPA and changing the prescriptions for all 26 parcels from limited sewers expected within 20 years to sewers expected within 20 years. This item was recommended by the Water Quality Subcommittee following our June 14th meeting. This action is being requested to allow for a lateral sewer connection along the west side of South Boone Road to sanitary sewers. Lateral sewer connections are becoming available as part of the Boone Road Sewer Phase 3 project, which is extending sanitary sewers south along South Boone Road to serve the new Del Webb active adult community that is being planned for construction in Columbia Township. Again, the applicant is the Lorain County Sanitary Engineer. They're requesting both an FPA and prescription modification for all 26 parcels, and all affected parties have been notified and are in agreement. Attachment 2 on the left-hand side of the screen shows the current FPA boundary and prescriptions for wastewater treatment in Columbia Township. The proposed modification area, which I mentioned is 26 parcels, is shown with the black hatch lines in this map. The Boone Road Sewer Phase 3 project is going to extend the sanitary sewer south from Route 82 or Royalton Road to approximately 1,900 feet south of Squire Road. Attachment 3 on the right-hand side of the screen shows the proposed FPA boundary and prescriptions, removing those 26 parcels from the Lorain County FPA, adding them to the NURSD Southwest FPA, and changing the prescriptions to sewers expected within 20 years. So just to provide some context about the location of this FPA modification and the Del Webb development plan for this area, here is the master plan for the Del Webb Hickory Green site. It's east of the proposed FPA modification area, which is shown in magenta in this map. The west entrance to the development is off of South Boone Road, right where the dark blue arrow is pointing, and that is basically the extent of the sanitary sewer line. The FPA modification request discussion was initiated by NOACA after we reviewed the plans for the Boone Road Sewer Phase 3 project during our weekly permit to install or PTI tracking. When we reviewed the engineering drawings, we saw that the laterals were being installed in front of parcels along the west side of South Boone Road. And after our discussion with the applicant, they decided to request the FPA modification to ensure access to those new sewers through the laterals. The prescription change was required by NURSD to more accurately represent the changing conditions in the area with increasing development. Again, all parties are in agreement and the modifications are consistent with Clean Water 2020, NOACA's 208 plan. So our next steps, once the NOACA Board of Directors adopts the modification through resolution, it will be sent to Ohio EPA for certification by the governor and then on to US EPA for approval. Copies of the resolution and updated FPA maps will then be sent to Lorain County, NURSD, and Columbia Township. We are requesting that the item is recommended to the Executive Committee for consideration of placement on the September 2024 Board of Directors agenda. And again, the action is modifying the Lorain County FPA by transferring 26 parcels from the Lorain County FPA to the NURSD Southwest FPA and changing the prescriptions from limited sewers expected within 20 years to sewers expected within 20 years.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have a motion to approve, please? Mary, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. Move on to the next item, presentation discussion items. Future action, the state fiscal year 2026 through 2029 TIP potential projects for NOACA funds. Grace and Jim Thompson.
Good afternoon. As you know, we update the TIP every other year, and believe it or not, it's already time for us to develop the TIP for 2026 through 2029. And the objective is to get the NOACA component of it completed by the end of the year and have the board approve the NOACA allocated funds in December, and then to have the full board adopt the full TIP, including ODOT projects and other community projects in March of 2025. We are currently coordinating with local and regional project sponsors. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, we were out in Lorain County meeting with Bob Kleiber and Sean Dufala. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jim Thompson to go into the detail of the TIP.
Thank you, Grace. Good afternoon, everyone. Just so you know, we are not asking for an action at this time. This is for information. But previously, the criteria and methodology to evaluate our qualifying projects was presented to the NOACA Advisory Councils, our Transportation Subcommittee, and actually to this committee a few months ago. Okay, so as Grace mentioned, we are seeking to develop our 2026 through 2029 Transportation Improvement Program, which we will present to the Board of Directors in March of 2025. Then the statewide TIP will take effect in July or on July 1st of 2025, and that will last, it's a 4-year program through June 30th of 2029. And so the NOACA state fiscal year 26 through 29 tip development schedule and the March 2025 Board of Directors approval date has not changed. So I should mention that the timeline for the approval of projects recommended for NOACA funding is being updated though. So this is specifically looking at the projects that NOACA funds, not the overall tip itself. And so this will not have an impact to existing projects which are currently programmed for state fiscal years 2025 and 2026. Currently, we are evaluating our projects in accordance with the methodology that was approved previously and brought to our advisory council subcommittees and this committee. Our intention is to determine the NOACA funding priorities for the entire region, as well as to develop our program of projects which are to be funded by NOACA through the next tip. So this slide illustrates our steps for the process. And so first and foremost, we did develop our TIP potential project universe. And really that project universe is derived from our long range plan, ENEO 2050. And then we go through, depending on the project type, we have our TAM program, which derives various segments that are expected to be degraded to a certain pavement condition rating through the 26 through 29 tip window. And then we do screen our projects against the ENEO 2050 priorities. And so currently, as many of you may know, we are coordinating with local and regional project sponsors. So we are reaching out to city engineers, county engineers, to various local staff to validate and ensure that our list of potential projects that are considered for NOACA funding are accurate. So by accurate, I mean we want to make sure that we have the correct roadway segments. We want to make sure that we are looking at the bridge projects that are the needs during this period of time, as well as enhancement projects, so multimodal projects. We want to make sure that they are being considered with the appropriate cost estimate and to be implemented in the correct year. So that's happening now. And then our next step will be to filter our top 25% of our roadway segment projects, and that's based on our cost effectiveness score. And then once we have those filtered, we will evaluate those against the NOACA regional significance criteria and other considerations. So that's a standard process. That's a process that we went through during the previous tip development as well. So that being said, our project universe for years 26 through 29 includes 892 roadway segment needs, which were developed through our Transportation Asset Management Program, also known as TAM. And so we look at things such as minor roadway repairs all the way through major rehab. So there's various project types in there for the roadways. And then we also have 37 bridge needs that we are evaluating throughout the region, as well as 37 enhancement needs that were provided to us through our planning effort of ENEO 2050, as well as the previous TIP development 2 years ago. And those enhancements do include our multimodal projects such as bicycle and pedestrian facilities, intersection reconfigurations, roadway configurations, streetscapes, as well as transit projects. If you were, a member of one of our advisory councils or the transportation subcommittee, you may have seen a presentation in the past couple of months in which we provided you with a web link to review our universe of projects, our draft projects, which are those 892 segments of roadway, as well as those 37 enhancement projects and 37 bridge projects, to provide us with that feedback. So that's the sponsor coordination component. We did receive the feedback. The deadline was just June 28th, and we did receive quite a bit of feedback. So we are in the process now of essentially reflecting that feedback in our draft list of potential projects. And so this is the updated schedule of the process. Initially, we were going to bring you the NOACA project recommendations today, but we did delay that by a quarter to make sure we had sufficient time to get sufficient input from our local communities. So that being said, we are today presenting the updated schedule to the Planning and Programming Committee, but we do intend to then provide recommendations for project funding of NOACA funded projects at the October Planning and Programming Committee meeting. And then we expect to provide whatever recommendations come out of that Planning and Programming Committee meeting to go to the Executive Committee in November, and then to the Board of Directors at their December meeting this year. And then after that, per usual, NOACA staff will work with our project sponsors, with ODOT and everyone to make sure that all of the scopes and budgets are accurate as we move forward to programming those projects to get them into ODOT's system and to move them forward. Okay, so next steps will be that staff will continue to evaluate or potential projects for NOACA funding in accordance with our methodology. We will then provide our recommendations to you at your next meeting in October. And then pending board approval, we will work administratively to make sure that those projects move forward. Oh, and that's all.
Thank you, Jim. I just want to say thanks. This is the time where there's a lot of heavy lifting for getting our projects programmed for a few years out. So this is laying the foundation. So hopefully everybody has taken the time to look at the draft that was put out and offered their comments, because now's the time to do it. So I do appreciate the effort of Grace and staff for making trips out to see everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Reports, updates. Does anyone have anything? If none, we will go to old business. Any old business? New business. Does everybody want to go home early? I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting then. And a second? All in favor? There you go. Thank you. Next meeting is on Friday, the October 11th, here at 11:30. Thank you.
First time that policy went longer than planning and programming.